And here we are, we're live. And I'm just going to share it to Facebook pages for a few minutes. Hi, Dolores. How are you tonight? I think you're the first one here, which is very often the case.
There's a devotee.
I'll share to a couple of my pages here. Boy, Facebook's been making it very difficult to share lately. The scroll bars don't appear.
That's weird. Yeah, maybe something to do with the popularity of left-leaning content. That might be done to do with some censorship. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it could be something like that. It could also be that I need to start sharing on my phone instead of sharing, but from my computer. I think sometimes sharing on your phone is easier.
Right. I agree with that.
Okay, so I'm going to shut off from Facebook sources at this point, and we'll be starting up in earnest in just a moment. Okay, we're getting a little interference from your sound. So, yeah, it's sounding a little bit like a sound box. In other words, some echoes or something like that. Anyway, we got some people here. It says,
yeah.
Okay, Dolores says, hello, everyone. And she's sharing. And Lana Dell says, hi, all. Karen Burke says, hi, everyone. Carmen says, hi, guest hosts and friends. Kay Ryan says, hi, all. Glad to see you. And Kay Ryan is sharing. And Laura Fielding says, hello to you, Shareef and Joe. So there we are. That's the initial contingent. Please share as much as you can, folks, so we can get some more people here to hear us. So my guest for tonight is Shareef Snuggs, and I think you all know him. He was the first mover and one of the organizers, primary organizers of the 56 Cities March for Medicare for All on July the 24th. And when that was over, he immediately started working on a complaint to the UN for violations, of human rights in the United States due to denying people Medicare for all. I believe that's the substance of it, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about here tonight is I'm going to give Shareef a chance to tell us how he got into his activism in the first place, and of course to tell us about his experiences in the organization of the 56 Cities March, because that, of course, was a really major accomplishment. Then we'll move to the UN action that he's involved in, at this point. And after we get through with that, we'll discuss his vision for the future and the actions that he's planning, at that point. And as we go forward, we'll have a lot of discussion, I'm quite sure. I see Quaker Socialist is here, but welcome to you, Quaker Socialist. I think, if, as I recall, this is the first time you've been here. Okay. But BL is here. Thank you, BL, for coming. Okay, and also the Lisa girl is here. Hi, Lisa. And she says, hello, everyone. Fight on all fronts. And also Elvira Mahalko is here, and she says, hi, how is the complaint to the UN coming along? So we will get to that. We'll certainly get to that. But I'm going to turn things over to Shareef now so he can tell us how he got into this activism in the first place, why, of course, he got into activism in the first place. And then we'll proceed with the rest of the categories that I spoke about just a minute or two ago. So, Shareef, it is all yours.
I got into activism because of COVID. Before COVID, I wasn't someone who organized any events, who was an activist. I went to protests, probably like most New Yorkers. I live in New York. But I never had any inkling or any desire to be a dedicated advocate for healthcare, to be an activist, to be an organizer. Had zero interest. I watch a lot of like podcasters like Jimmy Dore and Graham Millwood and Ron Pacone, like so many of us on the left. I watch a lot of those guys. I still do. Those are the guys that are my heroes. They're the rock stars. It's kind of I'm in awe when I go to a protest now or go to any march or anything like that, and people want to take a photo with me, which I find to be very fascinating and very interesting.
Hey, we're having a little bit of interference tonight. I'm not.
That's awful. Is it my end or your end?
I'm not sure.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Moving on. But what made me catapult into activism? Yes, it was COVID, but more importantly, it was when Bernie Sanders said now wasn't the time for Medicare for all. I felt that was a great unmasking. For me, that got me off the couch to want to go out and do something. But I didn't go right away because I felt like, well, I'm going to stay home and, practice social distancing and all the other protocols that we were supposed to be doing.
Yes.
And then when Forced to Vote happened and that, busted, I was like, well, we have to do something about this because this was like, for me, was egregious. It was above the pale for me. I felt like we have to move because I lived in Jackson Heights and that was like one of the hardest hitting areas in New York City for COVID. There's so many deaths there. So because of which, I felt that no one met the moment. No one really went out their way to prevent this from happening, and we still don't have anyone preventing this from happening as well, with all the COVID variant that's going on right now. So what I did was I joined different organization Slack groups. And I jumped in there from People's Party to Our Revolution to DSA to Forced to Vote. And I was just literally just going into these different groups, asking them, okay, Forced to Vote failed. We're in a pandemic. Do we have any strategies? Do we have any ideas of how we're going to move the needle? How are we going to get Nancy Pelosi or whoever to be interested in getting Medicare for all back into the conversation? That was really my focus. I wasn't, even at that point, I wasn't even trying to be an activist and organizer. Let's get those people who are in healthcare justice to go out there and help them do something about this.
Yes.
And I didn't get an answer that I liked from any group whatsoever. So because of which, and I felt that people were just moving way too slow for me. Ricky Dunlop, Renee Johnson, and so many different other people that I met from Forced to Vote, that I met from other different groups. We all decided to come together to do something. from Edie and different Dan and different other people that are in my coalition, we all decided to come together and just to do it ourselves.
Sure.
We was really just arrogant in the sense that we just said that we're going to do our own march, and just said that screw it, we're just going to figure out a way how we're going to do it. So that was the point of me saying I'm going to be an activist. But then even then, I still joined other groups and took notes and talked to the other activists, talked to the other organizers, and asked them questions about activism and organizing and what do you do, and just pick people's brain. And then we started off with one march, and one march snowballed into 56. I feel like my biggest success in activism, with the marchers, was the fact that Laura Feldon got involved, Savage Joy got involved, Mary Williamson got involved. So many different other people who got involved really made this the movement that it is. A lot of times people, look at me or look at, different things that are happening in the movement. It's hard for me to take on the day of the march. I spent so much time talking to people about their healthcare story and about how COVID affected them and how COVID is still affecting them and how people lost loved ones because of, our egregious, awful, rapacious healthcare system that we have. That's what really got people out on the street. So I know a lot of people say I need to take more credit for my success, but it's hard for me to do that when hearing people's story, because they're being ignored by our politicians and by our country.
Sure.
This is why people are coming out, and people want to know that people are listening to them. And so the March for Medicare for All and that day of action for me, for a lot of people, is more therapy, because mental health in this country is a big issue. It's something that is ignored.
Yes.
And I personally feel that the fact that when I went to meetings with different other activists, different other organizers, and different other volunteers, the fact that I was able to just listen to them and have them share their personal stories with me, and them asking me, Shareef, are you really serious about doing this march? And people just seeing that we were really gung-ho and really active, that's really touched them and want to make them be a part of this movement. Laura Felding always talks about fight all fronts, and that's something that I always wanted. I didn't know anything about kind of like the schism, I would say, for lack of better words, that happens in activism and what happened was on the left. Because my arrogance or my lack thereof of like knowledge of like how everything works was like, we need to get everyone involved in this conversation. So I wanted to reach out to everybody. I don't care what your background or what you believe in and what your platform and whatever the situation is. I just want
Shareef? By Shareef, are you there?
I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay. You keep cutting out. So what I'm going to suggest is that you get out of the broadcast, click the link again, and come back in, because sometimes that will solve the problem.
Okay, let me do that, okay?
Okay, sure.
All right.
Great. So hopefully this will fix it up, and we'll get a much more fluent session. Here is Shareef again. I'm adding him to the stream once more. Hello.
Hello, I can hear you.
And I can hear you.
All right. Let's try. We'll try that again.
Yeah, we'll try it again, see if it works.
Yeah. I mean, so COVID was, I think, for me, it's such a polarizing pandemic that we never dealt with anything like this.
No, we never have dealt with anything like this.
And I think that that's why the marches were so successful. On top of the fact that we was listening to people and we was giving people a chance to air a grievance that our politicians wasn't adhering to. We just recently did a Rich and Neil action, and I talked to a lot of the organizers and a lot of the volunteers in Boston recently, just talking to them about the pain that they're going through. And again, that's the key, I think, to activism and organizing, is being a fantastic listener and actually showing comrades that you actually really care about what they're going through. It's about community building.
Yes.
So if you're not community focused, in my opinion, I can't see how you can be an activism organizer. I just don't.
Yeah, we're still getting a little cutting in and cutting out.
Right. That might be. That might be something else. I don't know why that's happening.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay, let's continue.
Right.
That's all right. We're just going to have to leave it, I think.
Right. To just wrap up that point about like the beginning of the marches and like why it was successful, I think that it had a lot to just do with that, just being community focused minded.
Yeah. Right. I'm sure it did. I thought one of the amazing things about this march was that there was very little top-down involvement from the recognized organizations that had been working in this field for years. It seems as though there was a paralysis when Biden came in. Everybody shifted to the inside game. They thought they could get something accomplished with the inside game. But because Biden came out so strongly against Medicare for all from the start, saying he wouldn't sign a bill if it crossed his desk, it seems to have frozen all the groups into just trying to negotiate inside, and to have persuaded them that they should not dare hold any external actions, which then created a situation where the marches could be truly bottom up.
Right.
It certainly didn't involve any top down involvement at all.
Right.
But very little money from the usual sources was involved in this.
Right. And that's
people coming together.
Yeah, that's the key too, because we was trying to be inclusive as possible. We really wanted everybody and their mother to be involved in this action. Anyone who had a voice, we want you, because we're all human beings. We all want the same things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when we all get sick, we're all going to go to the hospital. I don't care what you believe at the end of the day. If you're sick, you're going to the doctor.
Yes.
So.
Of course. How did the Richie Neal action go?
It went well. It was successful, in my opinion. He's the head of the Ways and Means Committee.
I know. He's a major barrier to Medicare. That's been for years in the Congress.
Right. So the idea in that regard, after the march, our goal in the for March Medicare for All is to continue to do further actions. Granted, we are going to have another big march next year. We want to continue doing this until we actually get Medicare for all for every single American, regardless of what happens. I know there are some state initiatives, and hopefully those are successful. Whether or not, we're still going to fight for a national improved healthcare. So our goal is to try to reach out to any group and apply more pressure to any politician, no matter where they are. So the Rich and Neil action was something that we just thought that would be successful, because is another point to hit. We're not gonna just target politicians. Full disclosure, we are gonna start targeting the healthcare industry itself. So we're gonna start attacking the money. So just to let you know, we talked about future actions. That's something we're definitely gonna start doing too. We're gonna definitely start targeting people who do make money off the fact that you don't have healthcare. and that needs to be addressed. Too often, on the left, we focus on Nancy Pelosi, we focus on Joe Biden, we focus on politicians. That's cool, but what about the CEO of Pfizer? What about the corporate whoever of another entity that makes money from, let's say, Tylenol, whatever the case may be? We're trying to
We lost about a minute.
Okay.
I think that time. Yeah.
Okay. I think the point was made that we need to focus on other people other than politicians. We got to follow the money, follow the purse string. Who profits from you not having health care? We know the data that Medicare for All saves money. If that's true, and I believe it is true, then why we don't have it? So now we need to figure out, well, who benefits from us not having Medicare for All? We need to attack those folks, right? And expose that and let that be known. And so the idea is to go after everyone that is in the way. So Rich and Neil action is just one of the actions. And we are going to attack more people who is a part of the Ways and Means Committee. Rich and Neil, we will attack Rich and Neil again. So that wasn't just a one-time event. We are going to go back to his home. We're going to attack him again. We're going to go more politicians' homes. So it won't just be from the Ways and Means Committee. We are going to target other politicians' homes and make them uncomfortable. That's the plan. The plan is to not stop. So we do have other actions in that regard.
Will you take specific actions against the insurance companies as well?
Yeah.
Of course, the people benefiting the most from
the
system of the insurance companies.
Absolutely. So obviously we'll attack politicians. We'll go to their office. We'll go to their homes. If we find the homes of CEOs of, or any pharmaceutical company, we find where they live, we're going to attack them too. The idea is to apply pressure wherever it needs to be. So if we find who's the head of, fill in the blank of any, pharmaceutical company you can think of, we know where they live, we're going to go to their house too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
How can you afford to do this, to plan it, and then also to get out there and actually do it?
Easy answer is we don't. We can't afford it. but the other answer is, how do we afford not to?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Finances.
Yeah.
How is the UN effort going?
Successful. I actually liked the UN action. So again, we was talking about what's the next steps after the big march. A lot of people was asking us, what are you guys going to be doing next? Because you don't want two things to happen after a big event. You don't want to get you don't want to get burnt out.
Yes.
You don't want to burn out your activists. You don't want to burn out your organizers. But also, too, what you don't want to do is kill the momentum. So you have to find a nice balance between the two. So the cool thing, what I was saying was, let the organizers of different areas, organize some event that would benefit them. But so we have that going on. But the UN action is simple in the sense that we're going to be filing a complaint to the UN in regards to the inequities in this country with regards to healthcare. We had a meeting today in organizing different working groups we're going to have because we need to plan this out, because this is a big effort. We do have the support and help from the National Lawyers Guild, and we do have other organizations that's going to come on board to help us, because this is going to be a tall order. So right now we're trying to figure out how much data we need to collect, how many months are we going to be doing this, what's the resources going to take that's going to go get involved. We're talking about something that hasn't really been done yet in healthcare, and also too that's a heavy lift. We're talking about a lot of time to put into the legal side of this argument. Yes. When we're talking about, because one of the things we need to do is domestic remedies. With the UN, you have to provide a argument has been done. You have otherwise they won't even it won't be. So you need a legal team just for that alone to put into your complaint filing. So that's just one area of in the complaint filing. Another area is the quality of healthcare. That's another working group. You have to talk about the inequity of quality isn't good enough in this country. You have to talk about that. You also have to talk about the universality of healthcare. You also have to talk about the affordability, the equality, discrimination, the availability. There's so many different things that you have to hit and that you have to go over because they make you jump through these hoops, obviously, right? So you have to provide data and provide evidence, so to speak, when you bring such a case to the UN.
Okay, so I'm going to share a slide, which you gave me the material before the program started.
Mm-hmm.
Let me find that here.
No, those are my notes that I was taking. Yeah, I love that.
Right. Can you see that yet?
On my end?
No. Yes. Okay, then I haven't successfully shared it yet. So let me do that. Now you should be able to see something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let me get that up here. Okay, let me read for it. So here's what we have right now for working groups. 1 is a quality working group.
Mm-hmm.
2, domestic remedies. That's the legal team. But 3 is the universal access to care, affordability care, and also denial of care. Okay, now for each of these areas, there's a working group, right?
Right.
Okay, and 5, that's availability to care, hospitals, okay, and clinics. We seem to have right now here in the United States a great shortage of rural hospitals, okay, and clinics, because so many of them have been closing in recent years for economic reasons. So access in the rural areas is really a problem. 6 is prisoners' care. 7, deportations, indigenous care, okay, and immigrants' care. Number 8 is COVID-19 and pandemics in general. Number 9, environmental, like, for example, Flint water.
Mm-hmm.
And number 10 is expert testimonies of doctors, okay, and nurses. And so there's a group for each of these categories. How many people are working in these groups altogether, Shareef?
Wow. Oh. We have at least like 30 people so far. I don't know. It's going to grow for sure. I'm not quite certain on who's going to be working where yet. That's the trick. That's the thing.
Okay, so this is really a big operation.
It is. This is my prep project to myself. So all the actions that I do, from like the Rich and New action, I didn't organize that. I was just a volunteer. All the other actions that happen from now until this is done, I'm going to just be a volunteer for it because this is such a huge undertaking that I won't be able to like be an activism organizer for any further actions because it's just too much work. This is too much work. There's too much data to collect.
Yeah, this would be so wonderful if this would have happened.
Well, my concern isn't so much as us filing it. My concern is what the UN would do once we file, and then if the UN just agree to do it, the United States response to the UN bringing this up to them. To adhere to our grievances. So I think we will have to provide another pressure campaign once the complaint is notified and put out there. The idea is to get more allies and get more boots on the ground for healthcare, because the real issue is, and a lot of people ask me, why would we go to the UN? Because why would we go to Nancy Pelosi? Why won't we go to our own Congress people? Why don't we go to so and so before we go to go outside of, like, I guess, the jurisdiction, so to speak? It's because they put more eyeballs on this. We're the only developed country in the world where we don't have a national, single-payer, free at the point of service healthcare system, right? So we're the richest country in the world. Why we don't have that? So the embarrassment, yes, will happen for the United States, but at the same time, because I don't think they care about that, but it will put more eyeballs on the movement, which is the most important. Because the problem is we don't have enough people on the left. We don't have enough people in this country, in my opinion, who's on the ground ready to go to fight for healthcare.
Right.
I think on the left, we have this illusion that we have more people than we do that care about these issues, and we don't. We really don't. It's a small club. We're really a small family. It's really small. And so the UN filing, for me, it makes that club even bigger. I really want this action. For me, it really puts more pressure, and it also gets more allies. Because a lot of people they're not aware. They just don't know that this shouldn't be happening.
They also, there are many, of course, who don't know, and there are many others who were totally discouraged.
Yes.
Because there is no attention, placed on this.
Right.
And because there's such a smokescreen coming from the people with money, propaganda, control over the mass media, failure to take up the issue in the first place. But then when they do take it up, the lying, all the half-truths they tell, the fact that they won't give any facts concerning what other countries are doing. They just ignore other countries.
Right.
But, so there are very few people who know that if you look at all the industrial countries, we have the worst healthcare system by far. And people don't know that. They just assume, well, we're the best at everything. They have, this myth, of American exceptionalism.
Right.
And sure, we're exceptional. And the fact that we're committing international crimes every day, according to the UN Charter, that we help to write ourselves. We are violating the international laws that we were primary in putting into place, and we violate these laws every single day.
Yes.
Okay, so the question is, how do we stop that? Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I actually predicted, and I think a lot of people think I'm crazy when I say that. I think we'll win Medicare for all in about 10 years, maybe less if we're lucky. But I think this is a winnable fight. I don't think that it's a battle that we're gonna lose if we continue to build an army. And what I mean by building an army, we have to get more people to know about these issues. My problem with the left, my major issue with the left, is that we speak too much in our echo chamber. We have to get people who don't agree with us to join the movement. We have to stop talking to other leftists about Medicare for all, because they're already on our side. They already believe what we believe. How do we get conservatives? How do we get liberals? How do we get other people who are not fighting for this issue? And I know that a lot of people don't think that's plausible, but I think that we have to start thinking of other strategies to win the argument. And stop saying that, just look at the data, because people just don't look at data. They just don't. We have to figure out other strategies. Here's another point that I'm bringing this up. So after the UN action, the next action I want to do is I actually want to start a petition to amend the Constitution to get healthcare a human right on the Constitution. One of the reasons why I want to do that is because most Americans, you ask them, do you think healthcare is a human right? Right? They will say yes. No matter what side of the aisle politically that they're on, they would agree with that talking point. So we're not talking about healthcare. We're not talking about Medicare for all, right? We're just talking about, do you think is a right to actually have access to healthcare?
Yes.
That's not on the Constitution. So you can talk, if you talk to conservatives about that, they would agree with that, right? So just starting a campaign on that, that's how you actually win these allies. This is what I'm talking about, just getting people to join the conversation. Get them to just get to the point where we both agree on this point. Let's start there.
Yes.
And then once we win the battle of getting healthcare as a human right on the Constitution, let's use that as our next target and say, well, the Constitution says healthcare is a human right. How come I don't have that right?
Right.
Why don't I have healthcare? So I think that we need to start chipping away at the language and start chipping away at different strategies to get Medicare for all. Because I think the problem is that we need to start using certain kind of loopholes to get certain things we need to get done. I think once we get that done or something like that done, we can go.
Yeah. So let me introduce some comments here. With respect to the constitutional amendment, we're talking a long time to actually get to the amendment.
Yes, that is true. But I think that if we actually work really hard and we actually push for it, I think that something can be done. I don't think it's out of reach. I think that
You're right. But what would you say the time frame is for that?
probably 5 years.
Okay, I think 5 years would be very fast. Okay.
You think so?
Yes, just in terms of how long it has taken some other amendments to pass the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it seems to me it's more like a 7-year period.
I think
because you have to get a ratification from 3/4 of the states.
Yes, but the reason why I'm hopeful, like the marches, we started a campaign, and because we live in a digital world now. I think that we can do it faster.
Well, we can certainly spread things around faster, but the question is whether we can get the legislatures in all those states to move any faster. And yes. The other point about this is if we did have a movement going for Medicare for all, sufficient to support a constitutional amendment, then probably that movement would be strong enough to get a Medicare for all bill through the Congress.
Well, my argument is a lot of people who are for Medicare for all, also for, I was going to say, a lot of people who are not for Medicare for all believe healthcare is a human right. So I think that we will get more allies that way by not addressing Medicare for all, but just addressing, do you think healthcare is
but yes, I hear you, and I agree as well. However, it still might be easier to pass a Medicare for all bill through the Congress, just because of the technicalities, the amount of time it takes to go through the states. Like, okay, for example, one of the methods of actually creating some amendment, but one of the most popular methods in the past has been to go to Congress and get the amendment passed through Congress. But if you have enough people for that amendment, you're very likely to have enough people to pass a Medicare for all bill, say, by first getting rid of the filibuster. Okay, and by then simply winning a majority vote in the Congress. Now, I'm not actually arguing, trying to argue against the constitutional amendment. I think even after you passed a Medicare for all bill, it would be good to have the constitutional amendment, but guaranteeing the right as well. So I don't think it's a wasted effort, okay, to try to get a constitutional amendment I do think, though, it's probably going to be faster to get a Medicare for All bill actually through the Congress. In some ways, we're not so far from that, okay, at this point. If we had some differences in terms of the leaders of Congress, okay, in the executive branch, we could have a much more favorable situation for Medicare for All. And every one of these leaders is old.
Mm-hmm.
So there's mortality that's going to be coming into the picture now fairly soon, probably for some of them in the next 2 or 3 years.
But do you think, I was going to ask, do you think we can get conservatives to join that effort, though?
It depends a lot. Okay, what it depends a lot on is whether we can get Mitch out of there and get his playbook strategies out of there. If we can create a situation where the Republican senators and the Republican congressmen have a greater degree of independence, okay, than they have now, then they would be in a position to represent the attitudes of conservatives who are for a Medicare for All bill. And we know that something like 52%, okay, of the Republican voters actually favor Medicare for All.
Right.
From polling, okay, we know that. So the question is, how can we get the opinions of those 52% to be represented by at least a few of the representatives in the Republican Party? And with the kind of party discipline the Republicans have now, both in the House, okay, and especially in the Senate, it will be impossible to get that done until these leaders are actually pushed out, okay, which they could be if they failed enough. In other words, if it were the case that it was possible for the Democrats to retain control of the Senate for a while, Mitch would probably retire, okay, at that point. I think he's only still there because he thinks he's going to take over the Senate again in 2023. Mm-hmm. And in fact, it's looking like he may be right about that. But, okay, the kind of thing I'm talking about is that quite a lot actually depends on the winds of practical politics and how things fall out in that case. Okay, that could make the passage of a Medicare for All bill, okay, a lot easier, okay, than it is today. But that said, though, if things roll in a particular way, where let's say the Republicans take over in 2023, and Mitch, okay, is reinforced, okay, for a few more years, we might not even have a chance to pass a Medicare for All bill until 2029, in any practical sense. So, a lot is going to depend on some very immediate kinds of things. If the federal situation turns for the worse,
which I think so.
Yeah, it could happen.
Yeah.
Then it's going to make a lot more sense probably to continue fighting on state fronts for single payer bills.
My question is to you though is that, do you think it matters though? Because I personally feel it doesn't matter who's elected. We still have to pressure that person anyway.
Absolutely, absolutely. In other words, in terms of ourselves and how we pressure, it's not going to matter. We have to have the movement and we have to pressure.
Right.
The kinds of pressure and where we exert that pressure is going to change, but depending on the political situation.
Right.
If we want to move the time for Medicare for All either forward or concentrate on state level Medicare for All. And I don't know what the proper strategy is, okay, at this point. I personally think that's why it's important that we fight, okay, on all fronts and follow multiple strategies at the same time, because then we can adapt to changing situations.
Right. The reason why I was bringing up the whole amendment to the Constitution is because we need a win. We need successes, and that's how you energize people. People like winners, right?
You're right. You're right.
People want to say my team is winning. My team did this.
Right. Yes.
So that's why I was saying that I think the amendment to the Constitution, adding healthcare human right on there, it's a strategy. I hear your point, but I was saying it's a strategy that I feel that more conservatives will latch onto than Medicare for All, because a lot of them, they look at it as a separate issue. We could probably we probably have more success on. But I do hear your point in regards to that the same energy that we can put towards amending the Constitution, we can probably put the same energy towards Medicare for All. But my only problem,
yes, but I'm not trying to make the point that we have a shortage, okay, of energy. And it seems
no, not at all, not at all. Right, not at all. No, I do. I understand what you're saying, but I was saying that I don't think we are able to do both. To be honest with you, I think it would have to be one or the other. I don't think we have enough allies. I don't think we have enough hands to do both strategies. We would have to pick the strategy.
I think that is true right now.
Right.
But as we mobilize people and have victories, then we will get more hands. And I think that by your idea, okay, of working for a constitutional amendment has the merit that, okay, let's say we work hard for that. Okay, and it goes through committees, okay, in Congress, as you know, as these things do, and it starts to get through a committee. Okay, that's a victory, okay, when it gets through a committee. And so we can trumpet that and we can mobilize people, by talking about that. Okay, gets through another committee. Again, that's a victory. Okay, gets through the House. That's a victory. Gets through the Senate. That's a victory. And so now we're waiting for the states to ratify it. And each time some states come in and ratify the amendment, that's a victory we can talk about too, to mobilize the effort. Okay, so I think that you're right in going after that kind of amendment. There can be a series of victories that we can use to invigorate the movement, which is always what you have to do with movements. To have to be continuously invigorating them so people don't get discouraged. Okay, so I think that is one way to do it, and that's a merit of taking that particular approach.
That's what I was thinking about that, and building. My thought process is, how do we get more allies in the movement? How do we energize people?
Yes.
How do we get more boots on the ground? Because I do agree that we should be doing everything. The problem is that I don't know if we're going to be able to. That's my fear.
Yeah, that's mine too.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think we're in agreement,
right?
Though, that as we mobilize more and more people, we'll be able to handle more and more too.
Right.
And so we have to strategize with that, okay, in mind, and have a feel for how quickly we are mobilizing people. Now, it is a hopeful situation in that when you look at polling, 88% of primary voters, okay, in the Democratic Party are for Medicare for All.
Right.
So that's very good hunting there in terms of trying to get people involved, okay, and to mobilize people. And among independents, it's something like 65%. So that's a very fertile area too, to get the independents in. Okay, and even among the conservatives, it's not so low that you can't get some people in.
Right.
Okay, so the point being, we could mobilize across the board and probably swell our ranks, but very, very quickly. But what we have to give some attention to, okay, is the idea that our effort here at this point is not the first effort, okay, for Medicare for All. People during the period 2008, 2009, and 2010 also wanted Medicare for All and were fighting for Medicare for All. And the polls were very favorable for Medicare for All, okay, at that time as well. And there were demonstrations, street demonstrations. I mean, I was in some of them actually myself, okay. And that was a situation where there was momentum on the ground for Medicare for All, but the powers that be simply choked it off. First, they diverted it with the public option trick sparkle pony, okay, which actually siphoned off, okay, a lot of left-wing Medicare for All support
Right.
into this but stupid public option idea, which was never going to work, okay, because it wasn't going to gain any of the economies that you could gain if you actually passed HR 76. But that diverted quite a lot of people, and then there proceeded to be a very, very long fight for reform that exhausted everybody, and that allowed Democrats to play with the donors, divert attention, even kill the insignificant public option bill, that managed to come out of the committees at that time. Okay, it would have only covered 10 million people in the public option, in the United States, which was one reason why it was bound to fail, because it wasn't going to cover enough people, so it wasn't going to get the economies of scale to compete with the private insurance companies. They would kill off the public option, okay, that kind of public option. But anyway, they were still afraid of it, so it never got through the Congress because they crunched it, okay, in various ways anyway, in spite of the broad public support for the public option that also existed at that time. So there was a hard fight for more than a year, and they finally passed the ACA in March of 2010, and somehow it never got into their thick skulls that when the congressional elections of 2010 came around, they had nothing to run on.
Right.
They just had nothing to run on, and they wouldn't believe it. You couldn't convince them they didn't have anything to run on.
But I think that you ask most of us on the left who are big Medicare for All advocates, I don't think they'll fall for that trick anymore. I think now they're smart enough to realize that it's either a national single payer system that's free at the point of service, or it's nothing at all. And I think a lot of us they want that. I think the state-led initiatives are proving that. The national-led initiatives is proving that. So I think that we're past public option. We're past, I'm sure you have some people, but majority of people, if you ask them, there are state-led initiatives, and there's obviously a national-led initiative that wants a free at the point of service system. Like anything short of that is something it's off the table. It's not something that people are interested in. So
but we're seeing right now, as part of the reconciliation bill, they have a plan for the expansion, of Medicare, so it covers dental, vision, and hearing.
Sure.
I doubt that it's going to be free at the point of service. It's probably going to be similar to the Medicare we have now.
Yep.
You have co-pays, and deductibles, and there's room for the private companies, to come in with a Medicare Advantage. So the Biden administration is still foisting that, upon us. And it doesn't seem like our representatives in Congress are willing to say, look, this isn't a solution. It is simply a diversion.
Right.
And we're going to defeat it.
Right.
And until they get up on their hind legs and they do that, we're not going to be able to make much in the way of headway to Medicare for All.
Right.
I'm
sorry.
Okay, I kind of distrust the strategy that Bernie, is following on this. It seems to me it's too much of an incrementalist strategy. If he continues to follow it, it will take too long to get to Medicare for All.
There's one thing that a lot of people are going to disagree with me with. I am not for celebrating or championing politicians. I want to pressure politicians. I want to make them uncomfortable.
Me too.
So I'm not for electoral solutions at all. But I don't poo-poo people who do, and I don't think that's healthy. Again, something that I talked to Laura Fielding, for people who don't know who I'm talking about of the Red Berets, is that when I say we should fight on all fronts. I literally mean that we should work with everyone who is fighting for Medicare for all. I do not see the point in shooting down someone who wants to fight for Medicare for all and they believe in electoral solutions, or they believe in state-led issues, or they believe in national, or whatever way they in how they process to get to that point. We should invite everyone to the table. We should invite everyone to discuss how we're going to work together to fight for Medicare for all. So, like, that's fine if you disagree with someone's strategy. I'm not. I'm not gonna like argue with someone because they don't like my strategy or I don't like their strategy. That's not the issue. The issue is that, well, we both disagree on each other's strategy, but how can we work together? So for me, fight on one front is not about whether or not I agree or disagree with your strategy. How can we work together because we both want the same thing? That's
Sure.
that's the issue that we need to start thinking about. She totally agrees, obviously, but that's the thing we should be thinking about. And the problem is that we don't do that on the left. We need to start doing that. We need to figure out a way of how we work together. How do we actually coexist? Because we're all different. That's fine. It's okay to be.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, but Captain Stack says we have to build the coalitions. It's all about the coalition building, okay, with other groups.
100%.
And build coalitions based on things that we can agree upon.
Yes, exactly. 100%.
So we have to find those things, and we have to build other coalitions.
Absolutely. Just to recap, I don't know if you have any new listeners or new watchers on your
yeah, we have Fran Bauer is here. I think you know Fran.
I do love Fran. Hey, Fran.
Okay, Laura Fielding, Liesel. I guess the new person who's here is Fran Bauer. Okay, I am scrolling, and but she's arrived. We said hello to Quaker Socialist, okay, a little while ago. Holly Horn is here.
Hey, Holly.
To say hello, Holly. How you doing? And Carmen Muniz is here. Okay, so I guess we got about 13 folks here at this point. Someone mentioned, isn't Savage Joy also involved with the UN effort?
She is actually. Yeah, she definitely is. Yeah. Oh, just a bit of a recap. So we're gonna continue doing nationwide marches. Which are gonna be annually. We're gonna continue pressuring politicians. We're gonna go after anyone in the pharmaceutical or healthcare industry. We're gonna pressure them as well. We're gonna go back to Rich and Neil. Anyone who's in the Ways and Means Committee, we're gonna pressure them as well. We have the UN action, which we're going to do. We have some other actions that we're planning on this fall, which I'm really excited about. The amendment of the Constitution will be one action, which I'm excited about, which we will do. And next year, we're going to have the Nation March. I mentioned that. And then another action that I want to do is direct action training. So one going to other Black Lives Matters protests and some meetings. I've been to other like immigrant rights meetings and some protests, and they do trainings that deals with civil disobedience and deals with like how do you, dealing with law enforcement.
Okay.
And something that I never really see in healthcare. And so one of the things that I want to do is push the needle for further disruptions in getting legislation passed. We do need street heat. So we don't really get that in healthcare. And so with the direct action training, we do need to do major disruptions that will make the establishment more uncomfortable. Marches, protests, rallies, whatever you want to call it, they're helpful and they have their place. But we do need something where we get more attention. Unfortunately,
such as general strikes.
Right, we do need general strikes, which is something that Fred Hampton left is they're going to have a summit for, which I will be at, and I'm hopefully get a chance to talk about a strategy that I actually do have. But we do need arrest risk actions. We do need something where, not advocating for people to be arrested, but we do need something that causes major disruption, so that is a possibility.
Yes.
We need something that.
So let me ask you.
Sure. Yeah.
Have you already developed a strategy for general strikes?
I have a strategy. I think I'm going to save that for the summit, though.
Okay.
But I do have. I do want to do training. So my plan is that I've talked to several people who've put on trainings for direct action. I'm going to have one here in New York, and then hopefully, I can get some trainings across the country. So for more people to do more direct actions in regards for healthcare. So that's something that I'm wanting. That's kind of another pet project that I actually have, because it's necessary. I don't think they even think we exist to some degree. I know, obviously, they know that we're upset, obviously, but they're not worried. They're not scrambling to fix a problem.
You're right, because we're not actually hurting their pocketbooks at present.
No, not at all. Not at all.
What we have to do is to hurt their pocketbooks.
Right. Absolutely. 100%. And so that's the next step. We need to figure out a way in healthcare. How do we target their money? And how do we actually make them uncomfortable to the point where they have to address us? How far are we willing to go to get healthcare in this country? What are we willing to do? And that's we have to dig deep inside of ourselves and really be honest with ourselves. How bad do we want it, and how far are we willing to go there to get it?
We're going to need the help of the nurses in that area, aren't we?
No, 100%. We will.
So, so getting them to join us would really be a primary thing for us to do.
Yep.
Okay. If they do join us, then of course they would be in a position to hurt the bottom lines of some of the providers.
Right.
But of course, that's very, very delicate, because when you're so vital to the healthcare system and you put a stop to it,
it's tricky.
It's tricky, because then they come down on you. You're killing people, and you're blah,
right,
blah, blah.
Right. It's very hard. It's very hard, and there's a fine line, and you have to know how to navigate that. And that's something we have to really think about, because what you don't want to do is that give a mixed message that if you're so much for healthcare, why are you allowing the nurses to not go to work today?
Yes.
It's really...
Yes, exactly. That's been a problem for teachers also when they strike, but they have faced a problem like that. Okay, it would be even worse with nurses, though.
It was like, well, you don't really care about the kids because you decide not to go to work today.
Yeah, absolutely.
But teachers got to get paid. Well, if you cared about the kids, you get paid. It's like, they always try to find, the media always find these wiggly words to kind of make you look bad for like going on a protest or going on a strike.
Yeah, because they're always trying to defend the owners.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about that.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, my plan for a general strike is community based. I think everything has to be community based, has to be community focused. You have to protect the workers. If you're going to go on a strike, I don't care how big or small it is, the people there needs to feel protected. And if you're not doing that, there's no strike. There's no such thing, in my opinion. I just think that.
Yeah, I think they need to feel protected, and they also need to be in support of you.
Right. No, agreed.
And you need to feel they're a part of the strike.
Yeah, you need the unions. And so the other thing too, in the Medicare for All movement, we got to get more unions involved with us. We got to reach out to those folks. We have to get organized, and we have to get them to agree to work with us. And not just unions, small businesses are really important. That's really important too, because the small businesses hurt by having to pay for the employer's health insurance. So you have to incentivize them to say, this is why you should join us. There has to be, right.
So let me clarify something, which has been just something that's coming into view for me now. You're working with the steering committee for the marches to plan a march for next year. You're also involved in the various other efforts that you spoke about here, okay, or that you plan. The efforts that you plan to activate, okay, at this point. Now, the way I'm seeing this, it seems like these are all separate efforts, and that you're involved, okay, in each of them, but they're all self-organizing efforts, and they're all separate, and the main figures, okay, in these efforts would be different all across the country, because the whole movement is decentralized, and you're looking at yourself as someone who is contributing to the decentralized movement by supporting all these various events and activisms, okay, that are going on. Right. But there's no necessary connection between, let's say, the march effort and the general strike effort. Okay,
no,
the march effort.
Right. The general strike effort would be separate from what anyone's doing in the March Medicare for All. So I'm kind of like going there almost as like someone sovereign, so to speak. You know, I'm going there as like just a volunteer for the general strike, unless that the March Medicare for All wants to kind of like endorse or support it. I don't know how their feelings are in regards to that, but I'm going there by myself, so to speak. But I do feel that one of the big asks, if you're going to do a general strike, is healthcare. So that's one of the things that I'm going to discuss, is that we have a plan. Like, what are you asking for? What do you want? What does the community want? So I think if you're going to do a general strike, you need to go back to, again, community focus. What does the community want? What do they need? Not what we think they need, when you need to ask them what they need.
Right. It's also possible that at some point communities will think that what they need is the replacement of a particular politician. For example, the Force the Vote movement on January 3rd, the main primary Force the Vote movement was to get a Medicare for All floor vote. It was just on that. But there was another Force the Vote movement that I was trying to organize, okay, at that time. And what that was for replacing Nancy Pelosi, and then attempting to negotiate with a number of others, who were going to emerge. They would have to step forward, okay, if Nancy Pelosi couldn't take the chair. And then perhaps someone else could have been gotten in there who would have been friendlier to Medicare for All. Well, that was the specific Force the Vote situation in Congress. But the same principle applies to these movements too. Is there any reason why they wouldn't be calling for the resignation of certain people who have been standing in the way, okay, of progress in certain areas?
Well, if a community asks for the removal of a certain politician, I'm against it. I wouldn't work with that. That's just for me personally. That's not to say that I don't want the community to have success. That's not something that I feel the energy of the community should be at. Because again, I feel that it doesn't matter what politician you have in office, you still have the same problem. But if the community wants that, I'm in full support of it. I just won't engage in helping in that support. I won't help them fight and advocate for it, because I feel that you should put that energy towards getting a national improved healthcare system. I just feel that same energy of you applying that, you should also realize that whoever you put in there, you're going to have the same problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's. Okay. So, is there anything else that you'd like to say beyond what you've already said about your plans for the future, okay, and your vision and the various things that?
I think we touched on everything.
Okay, so what I'd like to do now then is something I always do here, which is turn to the comments, okay, and entertain the comments. Some of them are questions, but some of them, okay, are comments. But, okay, I think you might well want to respond to some of the comments, okay, that have been made. So
Okay.
I will go back to the beginning now, or close to the beginning anyway. I'll skip the greetings, well, most of the greetings. There was an early comment from Laura who said, bingo, Shareef, bingo, regarding the success of the marches. Speaking for myself, I did feel deeply heard and included by you specifically, but as a whole, I think we all felt like we were part of something that we could really contribute to. It felt very authentic because it was. Everyone was welcome. The diversity inside, outside was astounding. People within the Dem Party, people, okay, who are very, very anti-establishment. So much inclusion.
I agree. Laura Feldon, she was the first person I wanted to speak in DC. Believe it or not. How I feel about Laura then is how I feel about now. Laura's one of my close friends. I love Laura. I look up to her. She's a fantastic activist and organizer. I really feel that part of like why my Twitter account my Twitter account is big because of her. And just her introducing to me to so many different people in this universe has been really tremendous. Has been really helpful, and she's great. She's been gracious. Her family's been gracious. Lisa's also amazing too. Great allies, great friends. It's crazy just being an activist now. Just meet so many warm and beautiful people.
Yes, I think Laura is absolutely tireless and tremendously imaginative in terms of how she approaches trying to motivate people every day to give something.
Yes.
Is very, very unusual, okay, in that respect. And in giving appreciation, she's very magnanimous in giving appreciation to everybody, and that really helps to hold the movement together, I think. It's a real talent that most of us do not have.
That's a fact. I agree.
And Carmen Muniz says, COVID is killing so many healthcare providers. We need free college just to train a new wave to fill the Medicare for all healthcare personnel but demand. Any comments about that?
Yeah, if you go to our petition page, if you go to the March for Medicare for All website, that's M4M4All.org. We have our petition for our UN filing. One of the things we mentioned, our third demand, is to prioritize healthcare in the federal budget. And I definitely put in there making sure that we could put money towards people actually putting towards that doctors and people who want to be doctors and nurses shouldn't have to pay to go to school. Free college should be free. College should be free in general, but anyone who's going to school to be a doctor or a nurse should automatically get their tuition free. Full stop.
Yes, I think so too. And they should also get support, I think, as well.
100%.
Through college,
100%.
too.
100%.
There's no shortage, okay, of money. In the healthcare area, there's a shortage, okay, of resources.
Right.
And, of course, among the most important resources are the people resources to give care. And we have to see it to it. We have a lot more of those. So Holly Horn says, going to lift the patent on the demo September 20th. I'm not sure what that's about, Holly. Carmen asked the question, Holly, does that mean on September 20th there's going to be a march? And Holly says it will be a small demo at the UN, Carmen. Okay, I didn't realize there was going to be a demonstration, okay, at the UN. And that's for reforming the patent system, Holly? Oh, it's probably a demonstration to take away the patents. But from the vaccine producers. But by the way, I heard the other day that the federal government, since its people were some of the people, okay, that were on the patent for Moderna, that since that's the case, the federal government has the right, actually, right now, to circulate all the technical aspects, okay, of the Moderna product to other countries, okay, and other manufacturers all over the world. Supposedly, Biden knows this, but he will not do it.
Of course not.
So that's just a point to make and to inform people about. Okay. So Lana Dell says, we do need more doctors, nurse practitioners. Just discussing that today in a Minnesota Healthcare for All conference call this morning. There needs to be a plan. So Lana, who are some of the chief people, okay, in Minnesota who are in back of the Healthcare for All movement there? Please leave some information in the comments. Bill says, this country has the money for Medicare for all. That's a fact. Of course, there's no problem, okay, with the money. It's not the money, it's the resources. And let's see, other comments, scroll through. And Lana responds to BL and says, it's true, there's no money problem. The Congress spends new dollars into existence per Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. It's their job and the law. There's no shortage, okay, of U.S. dollars. I think that's absolutely true, Lana. I also think it could use a greater degree, okay, of amplification.
Right.
Because to some people, it won't make sense. So it needs a little more explanation, I think. BL says the U.S. is only resource constrained, never currency constrained. Yes, that is true. And Lana says, isn't Savage Joy involved with the UN effort? And Shareef has said yes, that she is. And Kay remarks that unions have been using healthcare as a weapon against strikers.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but some unions have terrible leadership.
Right. I mean, this country is about to pop. We're gonna have more people striking. We're gonna have more demonstrations for workers. You're gonna see more of that.
Yes, I certainly hope to see a lot more while I'm still here on Earth to enjoy that. Right. Carmen Yuna says, okay, a little good news. Fascist DeSantis penalizing protesting law was shut down by a judge for now, in any case. We need Medicare for all protests every weekend before the right does get taken away in Florida. Yeah, you need to have those protests. And Lana says, I think we need door-to-door with knowledge people on the subject, town halls, direct mails, and so on.
Right, we do.
And Quaker Socialist says, yes, but we're in a pandemic, which of course is important. The pandemic is going to tend to constrain us somewhat.
Right.
I still believe this is really kind of off the point because we're never going to get it. Okay, but I thought from the start that the right strategy to follow with respect to the pandemic here was to follow New Zealand. They were doing it right. They basically cut the COVID off. They have only 5 fatalities per million. Sure, they're a small country. There are only 5 million.
Right.
5 fatalities per million versus more than 2,000 fatalities per million here in the United States. That illustrates the terrible failure of government that we have had here.
Right.
There are countries, okay, in New Zealand, I said it's 5 fatalities per million. In Australia, it's probably 37 or 38 right now, approaching 40. In Taiwan, it's 37, 38, approaching 40. All of those countries, ostensibly democratic countries, not even getting into China, have far better results, okay, than we have.
Right.
Of course, none of these countries are any comparison to China, except maybe for New Zealand. China's running something like 3 fatalities per million there, if you trust their statistics.
I think they're not wrong in statistics. What I think I think the reason why that is because, again, the average American do not care what goes on outside of this country. We just don't. There isn't. We're not looking for that data. How often do you? This information, they're not going to Google this. We on the left, we're the only ones. And again, we're a small minority in the United States that actually care about this stuff. That's why, that's why those statistics don't surprise us. But if more Americans knew that, I think we would have Medicare for all.
Right, but I think more of us have to talk in a very public way about the failure of our government compared to other
100%, 100%.
I mean, we have to drive home that kind of lesson. It 100%. Is so striking that New Zealand has only 5 fatalities per million. Only 26 people died, okay, in the whole country.
100%. But I mentioned that to you earlier in the interview that we on the left, we're our own worst enemy in the sense that we need to reach out to people and educate them on these issues. We need to go out there in our community and tell them that this is what's going on, this is a problem, and push the issue. We need to also get out of our comfort zone and and not talk to people in our echo chamber.
All right. And when they push back, and they will, okay, and they emphasize, that's going to involve taking away our freedoms. Mm-hmm. We have to respond, okay, by saying 1 million people have died in this country so far from COVID. 2.5 times the number of people who died in the Second World War. Ask yourself this.
Right.
When we were in the Second World War, did we worry about forcing people to do this or that when it was necessary to win that war? The answer, okay, is no.
Right.
And it did not destroy our democracy. I mean, people here are so precious about their freedoms. That's the only way I can describe it. They're going absolutely nuts because somebody instituted a mask mandate. They're infringing on my rights. Okay. But on the other hand, they take away your right to health care. They take away your human right to health care all the time, and all of us are silent about it. It's simply the way of things. What's worse, forcing you to wear a mask or forcing you not to have health care? What's worse?
Right.
These are not in the same ballpark.
And they're going to tell you a mask. That's what they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you a mask. They don't know any better, Joe. They don't know any better, Joe. That's the problem. They just don't get it.
I mean, but people that we normally respect are so precious about this. Like Kim Iverson, for example, was on today, and she was saying, what they want to do here is coercion. It's coercion. Guess what, folks? Coercion is a part of all of our lives.
Right.
It's natural. We're coerced by private sector businessmen who are running a business every single day in this country in outrageous ways. So, I mean, that kind of attitude just doesn't realistically face the scale of the pandemic and the degree of damage it's done to the United States.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
I don't understand why people haven't come to the conclusion because of COVID, why we need a national system. I just don't understand why that's a separate conversation. I don't understand that.
I don't understand why it's a separate conversation either. Of course, but Bernie Sanders and some others tried to point out, at the very start, of COVID, that people needed Medicare for all. But it fell on deaf ears. And I'm not sure why it fell on deaf ears. It should have been obvious to people that we needed Medicare for all.
I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on for a second. I think they told him, shut the fuck up. Don't you do it. Don't you do it, Bernie. Don't you do it.
Yeah, maybe they did. I don't know.
Because him going from now is at the time for Medicare for all, prior to the fact that we need Medicare for all now, and COVID comes, yes, what you say, that don't fit right with me. It don't sit right with me. I can't imagine someone going their whole career screaming to the rooftop, we need Medicare for all. And then when a global pandemic happens, you say, maybe we should wait.
Well, I don't think he said that at first. He was screaming to the rooftops as long as Trump was president, actually.
Well, before that, too, though. Before that, Bernie was a big Medicare for all advocate. I'm not going to say he was doing it. Maybe he was doing it more so when Trump was around, for sure. But he was, for a long time, he was pushing Medicare for all. And my point is that you don't do that unless you've been pressured not to do that.
Right. Okay. But my point was when he stopped doing that.
Right.
That was when Biden came into office.
Oh, sure.
That's what we see. In other words, he decided with persuasion, maybe without persuasion. I don't know. I can't say anything about that. But what I can say is that he decided he had a chance to get something good from Biden compared to what had, previously existed if he found a way to collaborate with him. And basically, that's what's happened. I don't know if it was, due to all kinds of illicit pressure or just his own attitudes throughout his whole life in Washington. He's been someone who will compromise to get something done if he has a chance to get something done. He compromised in 2009, 2010, as well. He first was screaming about, community health care centers. But in the end, he settled for a $10 billion appropriation in community health care centers, which then was bargained even further back. And he considered it a victory because he got, some community health care centers.
That's crazy.
So, he's always been someone who, he's very idealistic at the start, and he can fight for something for a very long time. But then for some reason, he compromises on something that is far, far smaller than what he's been talking about. Okay, so to me, his change of attitude by this year is more in line with most of his career in Congress than it is with his two presidential runs. Those were the exception.
So do you think it's a paycheck? You think he's getting a paycheck?
No, I don't think it's a paycheck in his case. It's because his career has been too consistent in not actually selling out for money. I think it's more like, this idea that he wanted to get something for people and he saw an opportunity to get something for people. And maybe that was not completely what they needed or completely what he wanted to get for them, but it was still something good, and it was what he could do.
Right. I'm still gonna look at Bernie as I'm still gonna look at him as like someone who's a big letdown. I just really
Yeah, well, I feel that way too. I mean, I'm not saying he's right to do that.
No, I know, but I'm just saying
I
that
had been in his position, I wouldn't have done that.
right.
If I had been in his position, I wouldn't have dropped out of the campaign when he did.
I'll understand how you're gonna not push Medicare for all during a pandemic. I just will never forgive that. That's crazy to me. It's
crazy to me too. I agree.
Nuts. It's nuts that you can even. It's nuts for any politician, but specifically Bernie, to not like say we need a national system. No one's pushing that. Not one politician, sitting congressperson, senator, is saying that we need Medicare for all right now. Let's get it going. Not one. We have no allies whatsoever.
Yes, I mean it's incredible. But Jayapal won't push forward her own bill.
Never.
She introduced it. It sits there. She doesn't even say anything about it anymore.
That's why I'm asking about the whole. You think it maybe might have to do with money, maybe being paid, maybe being bullied, maybe something, because that doesn't. I don't know. That doesn't sit right with me. That doesn't sit right with me at all.
Yes, but we also have to keep in mind that the bullying, the power,
right,
buying out, but things like that, that is related to who the leaders are.
But also too, like we don't have a when was the last time, Joe, that you think that we had a win, not just in healthcare but on the left, because we always losing. Why is that?
Well, one reason why it's losing is because the leaders who have risen to the top of Congress, who have done so with the help of the donors, the various donors, those leaders are there,
right,
keep us down, and to hold us back. And it's been a long fall for the left. In other words, from the point in the 1960s and early 70s where the left really had a lot of influence in this country. You have the failures, the economic failures of the 1970s, the failure of Keynesianism to explain what was happening, in such a way that something could be done about it that wasn't harmful to people. And then the emergence of the neoliberal ideology at the same time, and its institutionalization in terms of the Reagan administration, that really set this country on a spiral downward, a very long spiral downward, where basically the real left was completely ostracized. And, it was really a dirty word to say, that you were a socialist. I can remember back in the early 70s when one of our top economists, by Galbraith, John Kenneth Galbraith, revealed in one of his books that, yes, he was a socialist. In Economics for the Public Purpose, he revealed that. He had never admitted that he was a socialist prior to that, but he felt safe enough in the early 70s to say that. But then the climate really changed, in part because of the failure of the Carter administration to handle things from the economic point of view. Of course, there was a great challenge, because of the oil crisis and the stagflation of the early 70s and then the late 70s, two stagflations. And of course, Ford wasn't able to handle the first stagflation, so he got knocked out. And Carter came in. And when Carter was presented with more stagflation, He didn't know how to fight it. He attributed it to government spending, and he cut back on the government spending. It wasn't due to government spending at all. It was a cost push type of inflation, where the Saudis, for a while, were setting prices. And that was the rule, okay, for a while. And it ruined his presidency, Carter's presidency. I know most people think that he failed due to foreign policy problems, and particularly the hostage crisis. But the only reason why Reagan was able to take advantage of that was because of the economic crisis. At the same time, people were restive and dissatisfied because prices were going up, and up. Carter did exactly the wrong thing. He appointed Paul Volcker as the head of the Federal Reserve, and Volcker tried to stop everything by raising interest rates up. And the country was not very responsive to the rise, in interest rates. He had to go to 21% of the prime rate before he could take the inflation out of the situation. It was really a disaster. And Reagan won, I think, because of that disaster. If Carter had had a healthy economy, I don't think Reagan would have won.
Right.
I don't think so. But also, to tell the truth about Carter, he was not a particularly lefty person from the economic standpoint. His ideology was not, completely a neoliberal type. But he was still responsible for deregulation during that time. And a lot of the deregulation he went through in the long run was not good for the economy, at all. Anyway, getting back to Laura Fielding's comment, the issue as I see it is the March for Medicare for All has risked losing allies. There are people who are strongly adversarial to a multi-pronged approach, who, as I understand it, are in leadership. I would personally feel that I have a good home with Seattle March for Medicare for All under Andre Stackhouse leadership, but I do not feel like I have a home contributing to the national effort. This was most certainly not the case leading up to the marches, although I could see red flags, which some of us attempted to, and then she stops the comment there. Have you any comment on that one?
No, that's a fair assessment from on Laura. There's a lot of people in our coalition that have issues with state-led initiatives. There's a lot of people who have issues with national-led initiatives, and there's a lot of infighting, which is a big problem. It's a huge problem. And it goes back to what I was saying to you before, that we need to be better at working together, and that's a problem. We haven't addressed that issue, and it needs to be addressed. We need to learn to work with people who disagree with a certain strategy that we different have, and we need to support each other's efforts, and we don't do that. We just don't. We're really bad at communicating, and we're really bad at working with different people across the aisle too. So that needs to be addressed and needs to be fixed, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's going to be a long process.
Oh yeah.
Fixing it isn't easy.
Oh yeah.
It's among the hardest work you can do, I think, in this area.
Right.
So Fran Barra says, hi, Shareef, Joe, Laura, Dolores, Kay, and everyone. Right. And Laura Fielding says, it absolutely matters who is in office. There are people who will not be moved. Some of these people will need to be replaced, she says, which is why it's preposterous to hear so many people on the online left. Many of these people happen to be anti-state level organizing, talk about how they are done with electoral strategy. This is utterly preposterous. If people don't believe in an electoral approach, they can't then also be against direct democracy ballots by initiatives. This makes zero sense. One or T, and then she trails off with that comment. I'm not sure why Laura often trails off with her comments. But anyway, I thought that was a pretty good comment. Do you want to comment on it, Shareef?
Yeah. So let me tell you my perspective on why I feel that I disagree with that. And I love Laura. Laura is like one of my close friends. I remember Joe Crowley. A lot of people was like, let's get AOC in the office, right? So Joe Crowley is a monster. He's awful, right? He's like far more worse than AOC. AOC is in office. What is she doing? Right? I protest AOC's office. I went there to force the vote, try to get her to address this issue on healthcare. We sent letters, phone bank, call.
Right. I remember well the demonstration in front of her office.
Right.
Just after the march. That was quite a demonstration.
Right. So for people, and again, no disrespect to Laura or anybody else who believe in electoral solutions, for people who think that there's a difference of like a Joe Crowley and AOC, I'm a person who that's both of those people was my district leader. I'm telling you, there is no difference. Like whether you can have the conversation about AOC is more approachable than Joe Crowley, that's irrelevant. I'm talking about the hard hitting. Can I talk to you? Can I talk to you as a leader in my community about these issues? If I can't talk to you, you're equal. Doesn't matter if you're nicer. Doesn't matter if you have more flowery language. If I still have to do the exact same thing to get you to listen to my concerns, there is no different. You are no different. And that's my issue. My issue is not about...
Right. Okay. But I think I can reply to that.
Right.
Okay. Specifically, my reply would be actually twofold. First, there was an impact, of AOC getting into the Congress. And that impact was that the heir apparent to the speaker was no longer Joe Crowley, because he was gone. Okay. So she knocked, the heir apparent out. Now it's not so clear that Nancy Pelosi has an heir apparent. There's been some talk that Hakeem Jeffries is someone she favors for that. But somehow, in the process of AOC getting in there, and some of the newer progressives, as well, it has become far less likely that Jeffries, who is another neoliberal and bought, by the donors completely, it's become far less likely that he's been able to get, that he's going to be able to get into the speakership. That's the first part, of my reply. Second part, of my reply is that it would have made a difference, in my view, a substantial difference, if Nancy Pelosi had been beaten on January 3rd, and let's say a Karen Bass had come into the speakership, or a Debbie Dingell had come into the speakership, or a Jan Schakowsky, or a Rosa DeLauro. There are 6 or 7 speaker candidates that would have emerged that would have been far more friendly to Medicare for All. So the point I'm making is that if you replace specific people, there can be a big difference. It may be that at the lower levels of Congress, it doesn't matter. Because they don't have any power anyway. The backbenchers don't have much power.
Right.
But the people who run the Congress have power. And if you replace one of those with a better person, in other words, let's take someone like a Jim McGovern.
Mm-hmm.
He's been in Congress for a very, very long time. And he has had consistent support for Medicare for All. He's been the co-sponsor of HR 676, for a very long time. He talks a good game, on this particular subject. He's powerful. He's the chairperson, of the Rules Committee in the House. But he's not powerful enough to get past the opposition of Pelosi. But he was one of those people who might be an acceptable choice for speaker by the whole party. And if he did get the speakership, I'm certain we'd be a lot closer to Medicare for all than we are now.
Well, here's my other point to go back to that, and why I said that electoral solutions don't really help. If you look, everyone always points to FDR and he was probably pressured. Lyndon Johnson, when it comes to during the civil rights movement, he was pressured. Richard Nixon, when it comes to Vietnam, he was pressured. You see what I'm saying? These people didn't do it because they're nice people. They did it because of a pressure campaign against street heat. So my point is
even
that
further with Nixon, to reinforce this example, okay, with
Right.
respect to Nixon,
right,
he didn't want to do anything in the OSHA field,
right.
but he got the OSHA law passed. He didn't want to do anything in the environmental field.
That's the point I'm making.
Environmental laws fast because he was pressured.
That's the point I'm making.
I do agree with you.
Right.
That
Right.
we have to continuously pressure, and that
Right.
is very, very important. But
So-
also, we
Right.
have to replace certain people who normally just won't bend to any pressure.
No, there are people who will. I disagree that people don't respond to pressure. The problem is that we won't go there. We just won't go there. We just won't go there.
Okay, I think the point, okay, that I'm making is that there are degrees of responsiveness to pressure.
Right.
Some people are just dog-eared stubborn,
Right.
and there's nothing you can do to move them. They would rather lose their seat. They would rather lose their position. Like there are some people up on the Supreme Court
Right.
who would rather have the whole Supreme Court disempowered by the Congress rather than move away from the ideological positions that they favor. For them,
that's a good thing, though. But that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. What I'm saying is that if we focus on applying pressure to whoever's in office, even if that person doesn't move, and let's say they lose their seat, right? I'm saying that that pressure campaign is so powerful that the person who gets the next person in that seat is going to think twice.
I agree.
That's the point that I'm making.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter who sits there.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you that continuous pressure, okay, is always necessary. And the reason for that, okay, that I see is when you look at the lobbyists,
right?
How do they get what they want? They get what they want through continuous pressure. They always have the ears, okay, of the Congress people. We have to be there in the same way. We have to have that particular continuous pressure.
Right.
But still, that does not mean that it can't be very valuable in specific situations to replace a key person who's opposed to what we want to do.
Well, I'm not saying people shouldn't do it. My argument is that I want people, we need everyone to do everything, right? So my argument is for people who want to do that, who want to remove politicians out of their seat and use electoral solutions, they should do that. I'm team pressure campaign. That's my team.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
Okay, I see, and I entirely agree with that. Yeah. Because God damn it, we don't have enough of team pressure campaign. That's for sure.
Right.
Let's see, Fran Bauer. We need a leader, someone to pick up the torch where Bernie left off, someone with charisma, popularity, a unifying force that will draw more people into the fold. Now, you mean somebody like Shareef. And so Lisa says, and we need to amend the bill to kill value-based treatment. Yes. I think what Lisa is actually referring to there is that the idea of value-based medicine has penetrated, the CMS, and they are basically imposing by Zeke Emanuel's ideas about how to treat people. And HR 1976, by Jay Appel bill, has specified that control of the Medicare for All program be given to CMS. Now, I don't think that was a deliberate thing on her part, because she wants to undermine her own bill. For her, I think it was just a boilerplate thing. CMS is handling it now. So, of course, she specified CMS as the agency to handle it. But okay, I think Lisa is right. The bill has to be amended to prevent value-based medicine from being used in implementing the Medicare for All bill, because if it is used, it is going to kill Medicare for All. It's going to make it a neoliberal horror from the start. Fran Barrow asked the question, will we still need a supplemental plan if we pass the Medicare for All bill? Comment, Shareef?
I hope not.
Okay.
Okay. I really hope not. I really hope that if we get into the national conversation of having a free at the point of service system, that we don't have that. I mean, we won't have much, in my opinion, we may not have much say over how that may look. So I'm hoping that that's not the case. And I hope that we get enough Americans behind us to say we it's either free at the point of service or nothing. I hope so. So I don't want that to be a part of the conversation, because we get something like where 100% of people just get Medicare for all, because 40% of Americans right now only have access to Medicare, right? So let's say we get 60%. That doesn't make the system better. That just says now that everybody from cradle to grave have this system now. That's not good.
That's not good, because the system is terrible.
It's terrible.
The same terrible system.
Right, exactly. Because now we're giving everybody a piece of the terrible system. Everyone can have access to that. The idea is to make that better. Not my fear is that if we get Medicare for all, with Medicare right now, but for everybody, some people will just say, see, we won. Everyone has it. So let's go back to sleep now. I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
Yeah, we can't have people going back to sleep. In other words, this continuous pressure, continuous activity, it has to be continuous forever. That's what bottom-up democracy is about. If we want a bottom-up democracy, we have to create an infrastructure at the bottom that will allow people to be continuously active. We might have to do radical things like, cut down the work week to 30 hours or 25 hours. Why? So we can give people time to participate in politics and pressure things from the bottom up. But we want a different conception of a citizen, an activist citizen.
That might be a good idea, actually, to cutting people's hours.
So they could become active in politics. Yeah, that's a really good idea for.
I'm gonna put a pin in that.
Okay, good. Okay, Fran Bauer says, just to answer her last comment a little bit, with HR 1976, you would not need a supplemental plan.
Okay, good.
Okay, in other words, it covers really every major thing. It is comprehensive.
Great, good.
In that way. Now, there is a problem with the CMS, for reasons already discussed. But if we put some specific language in that bill to stop them from doing the value-based stuff, then that bill would be a great bill.
Good.
So, Fran says, yes, Shareef, hashtag fighting on all fronts, all inclusive. And let's see. So Quaker Socialist says, have been tweeting and getting retweets on tonight's stream with quotes from Shareef to boost for viewers.
Wow.
So you're getting quoted over the internet tonight on Twitter. Laura Fielding says, Fran Bauer, Shareef Snuggs has always been for a solidarity strategy. I would never have been involved, and not for him. I need to worry less about those who disagree on strategy and feel solid in organizing on a local basis under the leadership of Andre Stackhouse. Yeah, I think Andre is
I agree.
He's a really good organizer.
Love Andre.
and he's a really great thinker. Okay, as well. I saw the strategy session, Shareef, that you were involved in. He was involved in, and I saw the back and forth of all the thinking going in that strategy session. It was terrific. That strategy session was a terrific strategy session. And since then, I had an interview with him also, which I thought was a great interview. He is really terrific. Since the solidarity extended to Red Berets and whole Washington began with Shareef's outreach, and he, specifically you, Shareef, are still standing with us on a fight on all fronts approach. Technically, we haven't moved backwards. Well, maybe in reality, you haven't moved backwards either. I mean, maybe not simply technically, but, in reality, you might not have moved backwards. I mean, there are always setbacks, but in terms of net position,
no, agreed.
You may have moved forward. There are always little setbacks here and there.
I actually agree. I actually feel that we've had success in the movement for Medicare for All. I think that when a lot of people associate Medicare for All with Bernie, I love the fact that even though Bernie is not it's still a big push for it. So I think that is a success. That's a win. And we need to keep riding that wave of getting more allies and getting more people to keep talking about Medicare for All. The more people keep talking about it, in my opinion, I think that's successful. I think that's a win. I think we need to celebrate the fact that that's not a taboo discussion anymore.
Yes.
It's not a conversation that people look at you like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, of course, Medicare for All. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm for that. More people you talk to, they actually understand what that means and they celebrate that. So I think that's a win. We need to not be so hard on ourselves, because years ago that wasn't something that you can just relatively talk about and people actually would agree with you.
Yeah, I think we have moved. The progress has been substantial. It will continue to be substantial if we don't back off.
Agreed.
In other words, the worst thing about Bernie's dropping out was that it was such a depressive event for so many people, had been activated.
Yes.
But when those events happen, we have to immediately realize it should not stop us. But by the way, I have a criticism of Bernie on that as well.
Right.
He went out of his way to talk about the not me, us movement.
Right.
But when it came time to get out, he didn't consult us. There were polling methods available.
Right.
He could have polled his people and said, do you want me out? Okay, here are all the problems with the campaign now due to COVID. Okay, or do you want me to continue? He should have given us some consultation on that. But instead, he made a top-down decision instead of a bottom-up decision.
Right.
And to my mind, that involved a betrayal of his principles and a betrayal of his campaign.
Well, yep. And that's also to a lot of people. Ego comes first over the movement. Movements move people. People don't move movements. You have to put the needs of the movement before of your own. Like people have to put themselves away from, what they want and put the movement first. Because when you say you're an activist, you're saying that the needs of the people come before your own. And, that has to be consistent, and you have to be community focused. That's why I don't really like the idea of like being like the leader of like the march or whatever, or like having some type of title behind anything. I don't like that kind of talking or framing, because it just puts the wrong idea, in my opinion. I think we all are the leaders of this movement. If you're in healthcare justice, you are a leader in this movement, and we all need to start thinking like that, that we're all important. Our decisions and our voice all matter. And I think the moment we start thinking that we need to look up to someone else, I think we failed. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I entirely agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, there are a lot more comments.
Oh wow, Jesus! Oh, I have time, but I'm just surprised. I didn't think that people had that much comments.
Oh yeah, they have lots and lots of comments. There are always lots and lots of comments here. Okay, that was Laura's last comment. And then there was something from Fran Bauer, but we basically agreed on that. Okay, Elvira says, how do we get new people such as Republicans? We addressed that, so I'm not going to go through that. Okay, so Fran Barra says, I agree, Shareef and Joe. Laura is relentless. She's the glue that holds us all together, constantly bringing people in with her loving heart. I love Laura.
That's true.
And Lisa says, Laura's the reason we all met over the years. She's truly a force in the movement. We also say, hey, Quaker Socialist says, you can follow Shareef on Twitter at M4M4A. Alice Green says healthcare benefits would hold up that hold up by union negotiations the most. Yeah, I think that's true. They really fight over the healthcare benefits tremendously.
Right.
If we had a Medicare for All bill, they would be able to bargain for wages for a change. Wouldn't that be refreshing?
That would.
A socialist. You can follow the Main March for Medicare for All movement group page at M4M4All. Alice Green says for nurses anyway. And Lisa says our human clinical resource have been neglected and ignored throughout this pandemic for the purposes of profiting. It's unconscionable. I think we agree with you there, Lisa.
Yeah.
Lana said some of the Minneapolis the state medical people are State Senator John Marty, Ann Jones, by Rose Roche, and State Rep Fraser. She's not sure of the spelling. He's a gentleman of color, and of course Kip Sullivan. Yes, Kip Sullivan is an old internet friend of mine coming out of 2009 and 2010 when we were supporting each other in the fight for Medicare for All back then.
Wow.
And Laura Fielding says, oh, Kip was terrific. He wrote some essays, absolutely destroyed the public option. They're still worth reading today. They were really masterful pieces.
We need more people to write essays. We need more people to write books. We need more people to do more. We need people across the aisle. I don't think one strategy is better than the other. We need everybody to find their home or find their niche in this movement. More people talking about it, the better. So
yeah, we certainly need more people like Joe Jarvis, don't we?
We do. We definitely do. Love Joe. We really do.
Yeah, really do. It was really great to have him around as part of that movement. He's really on top of all kinds of facts. He's very, very good.
I was just so surprised that when I tweeted out to him that he was like he's in Utah. He said, I'm traveling to DC. I was just so blown away that he was gonna speak in DC. I was really in awe of that. It was great. That was phenomenal.
He gave a very good speech in DC, didn't he?
Oh, it was great. It was great. Everyone did a really good job. And I was just surprised of the amount of people that showed up in DC. It's crazy. We had like 600 something people that showed up. That was crazy.
That was a good showing.
Yeah.
I think it was among the best showings in the country.
Yeah.
Actually, for a city of that size, actually, DC is a fairly small city compared to other cities in other areas. So 600 was a very good showing.
Right.
Laura Fielding says, Shareef, I hope you don't mind if I push back just a little on the electoral strategy. I respect this is very much not your emphasis, and I very much feel that we have erred in the M4A movement, putting too many resources reliance on this as a strategy. But I would say to bring it the local, Senator Cleveland, chair of the Senate Wealth Care Committee, I think she's kidding about that, chair of the Senate Healthcare Committee, of course, is single-handedly blocking whole Washington from being scheduled for a public hearing. If we can't replace her with an uncorrupted supporter of whole Washington, and then she tails off again. I suppose, she meant to say, we're never going to get there if we're not able to replace her. But, of course, it's probably true that you will get there with the initiative effort, whether or not.
And pressure. Everyone has a boiling point. I don't believe that knowing can't feel pressure. Everyone has a boiling point. You just got to find how you're going to poke someone's buttons. Everyone has a button you press, you're going to affect them. And I think the problem is that we don't do enough poking. We just don't, in my opinion. And we don't have enough allies. We don't have enough soldiers. We don't have enough boots on the ground. That we just don't. And we have to do that. We have to get out there. So I'm with Laura. I hear her. I said I'm not on team electoral politics. I'm on team pressure. So I say, Laura, you go out there and do it, but just know that I'm gonna help you get allies on the ground so that when that particular politician doesn't do what they said they're gonna do, we come to their doorstep.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Lana says, Quaker Socialist, door knocking isn't just for neoliberal purposes. There is a lot of misinformation that's bandied about and taken in by the average person. This is about getting out of the echo chamber, Shareef. Yes.
Yeah, that's important. That's 100% important.
Yes.
We definitely got to get out of echo chamber. We have to talk to people that don't agree with us. We have to get out of our comfort zone. We don't do that enough.
Yeah, I guess that was one of the biggest things about door knocking during the campaigns, that it often resulted in people talking over the issues and actually informing them. And one of the most effective ways to inform people about things is person to person. If you can establish, a rapport with a person, then you are in a position to get them to listen to facts.
We have to do some door knocking for Medicare for All and for healthcare justice. We have to do door knocking for that. I don't care in what aspect. We have to figure out a way where we have to build some type of community engagement. I think someone mentioned town hall. I'm all for that. Because again, that's a pressure campaign in my opinion. Town hall. So whatever it is to get people out on the street to listen, that's important. So I don't snub anything that gets the community involved. That's 100% important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think you're right to focus on the community as well. Right. Just that word. Yes, people coming together in a community is very, very important to get change.
Right.
And to teach people new things when they need to learn new things. So BL says, who are the ones taking all the money to stop hashtag Medicare for All besides that's CVS? I think you mean who are the ones who are using all the money to stop hashtag Medicare for All besides CVS. There's all kinds of money from the insurance companies. There's all kinds of money from the pharmaceutical companies. The money spent by CVS against this is just a drop in the bucket compared to the total amount of money being spent. I mean, the pharmaceutical companies are there lobbying every single day. There are more lobbyists from these industries than there are people in the Congress.
Right.
Alice Green says, if your mother told you not to play video games all day and get your homework done, that would infringe on your rights for your own good. Well, of course, but supposedly you're talking to grown-up adults. So they don't really take kindly to be viewed as children who have not done their homework. And that's one of the problems. They all think they've grown up, but of course they haven't. And Laura says, I want to extend my deep gratitude to you, Shareef Snuggs, for traveling out to Washington State recently to stand in solidarity and to participate in our local community day of action, and also on our healthcare justice strategy panel filmed by Kenny Ballantyne. I hope the audience, isn't that a great name, Kenny Ballantyne, the 3-ring sign. I hope the audience, I think that's a New York joke. The 3-ring sign is a New York joke. So I hope the audience will visit the Red Berets, Medicare for All on YouTube and watch the full panel and share it out. So do I. By all means, go there and watch that strategy session. It was really terrific. Okay, I'm not going to read that one, Carmen. It's not that, because it's not the truth. But it's just because it's really a truth that I think we really all know, and we are starting to get a little short of time here. But Laura Fielding says, don't you both think, though, that if we zoom out and look at just this past year, beginning with Force the Vote, pressure, to Kenny Ballantyne reaching out to collaborate on this healthcare documentary, to the March for Medicare for All in 56 cities, at this level of movement building, we had previously been almost solely pinning our hopes but to electoralism. I mean, this is astounding, really, what we have accomplished this year. We have brought the political revolution that Bernie called for. I don't know if we've actually quite gotten there yet with the political revolution. I think we have a ways to go, but I agree that a tremendous amount was accomplished in this year.
Though it's getting there. I understand where she's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had anything like the activism we had this year. Right. I mean, I have to go back a long, long way to remember this kind of activism.
Yeah, I keep hearing that from people. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's really, I just can't remember when people were this active. I think it's wonderful. Kay says, but our teach the test education just bored her. Well, that's... okay, let's see. Carmen says, okay. Fran Barra says, we have no Medicare for all leaders except for Paula Jean Swearingen, who, by the way, was sitting in front of the Capitol this week for a little while, but Kashama Sawant, okay, and a few others. Yeah, that's true. And Paula Jean Swearingen, of course, hasn't been able to get the traction needed to get into Congress. Right. She really has to overcome tremendous difficulties, okay, in West Virginia, because they're cheating the hell out of her. There's no question about that.
Right.
And Alice Green said, Carter was not playing ball with the fossil fuel companies. They showed him who ran the country. Well, they tried. I still think he would have gotten reelected, and we would have been a lot further towards a green revolution then if he had known how to manage the economy. Had he known a few basic things that we know today, okay, from MMT, and acted on those things, he could have remained the president of the United States. And we never would have had Reagan, and we never would have had the neoliberal revolution either. And Lana says, Carter graduated from the Naval Academy, as did John McCain. And Lana said, if I could turn back time, laugh out loud. Not sure what that was in reference to. That is the turning back time. Lana says, what if Debbie Dingell was the speaker instead of Nancy Pelosi? Okay, I see Shareef's point, but there can be a difference. Yeah, there can be a difference in but Debbie Dingell's case. Okay, but she is the widow of John Dingell, who was there. I think he was first elected in 1956, and he served until 2014. And ever since he was elected, from then until he ended his term, he was for Medicare for all, or the equivalent of the time, okay, at that time. In other words, he was for universal health care coverage that was going to be run by the government. And he always tried to get it passed through all those years. And his father, who was congressman in the same district before John Dingell, was also for that. So Debbie Dingell married into that family, okay, in 1980. Her father-in-law was still alive, and her husband, okay, was John Dingell. And so the family business was like trying to get a Medicare for All bill actually passed. And she is now loudly for a Medicare for All bill, and was Jayapal's chief co-sponsor for HR 1976. And I think that she has within her a stronger push for Medicare for All than Jayapal has. Easy. And she's an interesting candidate for the speakership as well, because she's one of the only people who's a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and also the Problem Solvers Caucus. Somehow she managed to bridge the two ends of the party. So I think she has a possibility of getting approved, okay, by everybody. But where she's really most progressive is with respect to Medicare for All. So I'd love to have seen her the speaker.
Is she a sitting congresswoman?
Oh yeah. She took over John Dingell's seat when he had to retire. But she was elected to continue in his seat. I think she's in her own fourth term now.
What district is she in?
She's in Michigan. I'm not sure the number of the district. It's a very safe Democratic district, though. It's gerrymandered for that, and so she has a safe seat. She's for the Green New Deal and for Medicare for All, very, very strongly and vocally for Medicare for All. And she talks about if she was in a position to do it, then she'd be kicking Biden's ass pretty good. Okay, over Medicare for All.
I'm gonna reach out to her.
Oh, good.
I'm gonna go reach out to her.
Okay, she would be a good one to reach out to, because I think.
Is that Debbie Dingell?
Yeah, her name is spelled Dingell. Yeah, Debbie Dingell.
Okay.
The family name was Dingell now, going back since the 1930s, I guess. I think that's when John Dingell's father first got into Congress. So that's a long family tradition. Okay, I don't know what that sound was. I have no idea.
That's from outside. I have my window open because. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. Something outside of Shareef's window. Anyway, BL says, why would they go to AOC's office when they knew she was not even there? Did you know she was not even in the office at the time?
She's never at her office. That's the point.
Oh.
Yeah. She's never there. She's never in her Queens office. She's never in her Bronx office. And frankly, she's never in her DC office. She's never there.
So where did she spend her time?
Vanity Fair.
What?
I get your point, Shareef. Lana says, not Shareef's. This keyboard drives me crazy. Oh, she's talking about her typing on our keyboard. And Laura says, I agree, Shareef, on your point with Joe Crowley. AOC, fair, heard, agreed. But my point was policy has to be passed through federal legislation or through through some sort of a ballot initiative. So my point was not that I have faith in the electoral solution, but rather that we can't but disagree with both. How do we pass about legislation? Yeah, that's always the question. How do we pass legislation? In the end,
the same way we got the New Deal, the same way we got out of Vietnam, the same way. I don't think history repeats itself. We have to look back at history, see what worked, and do the exact same thing. We have to have a massive
look back, at history, but we also have to recognize that history could have gone somewhat differently. In other words,
for sure.
If Franklin Roosevelt had not been the president, now some of the things might have gotten through with Herbert Hoover still as president, because what's often forgotten today is that Herbert Hoover was actually a pretty progressive guy for that time.
Right.
He just failed to handle the Depression. It was, simply beyond his understanding to handle. But with the right amount of pressure, he might have been guided, in the right way. But the real question is whether the same thing would have happened if Landon had won the presidency in 1936, as opposed to Roosevelt. Would we then have had Social Security? I'm not so sure.
I actually think that the mobilization of the unions of that time, the Communist Party in that era, the socialists in that era, the pressure campaign that was there, I think that they would have gotten it still. I think they're highly more organized than we are, highly more smarter than we are.
We're
just not as organized. We don't have the sense of community they have. I think we need to understand that they was highly, highly, highly ready to go there. We are not. We are not battle tested.
They were organized. They were in the streets.
Yes,
were fighting pitched battles in certain places.
Yes,
very, very tough with Pinkertons, being against Pinkertons, and they won some very tough struggles. Of that kind.
Right.
But of course, the question is, if you get a politician who is intransigent and who goes to the military to put things down, you can have an entirely different outcome.
Like now, the question is, if we're that organized and we have that much people in the street at that point, then we can argue and say, maybe we can do a strategy or it doesn't work. Until we actually try this first, we can't say it doesn't work because we haven't done it yet.
Yes, and I certainly agree we should try it. We got to try it, and we got to do it. And we got to do the general strikes, and we got to hurt their pocketbooks, because
absolutely,
we know when we hurt their pocketbooks, that's going to work. When we hurt it enough, we know that's going to work, because that's the way those old strikes worked. When finally they weren't able to put down the strikers, and the owners saw they weren't going to get anything, and their existence was threatened, then they came to the table. Then they bargained. Then they settled.
Yes. Exactly.
And Laura Fielding says, but Pelosi won't be moved, but Biden will not be moved. I'm not sure that I completely agree with that with respect to Biden.
I don't agree with neither, actually. I don't agree with neither. Nancy Pelosi is so comfortable, right? She is so comfortable. She has not had not 1 ounce of pressure from us yet. We haven't done it. It's not about she won't be moved. She's never faced a massive pressure campaign from the left yet. Not one.
I think that's a fair point.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair point. But I think it's also a fair point that if she runs again in 2022,
she's going to win.
She might win, but if there's a massive amount of pressure in her district, and if the person she's running against, which will probably be Shaheed again,
probably,
okay, if he runs again, and there's a massive amount, okay, of pressure there, and the campaign is had nationalized, and they can't come up with any foolish smear again, she might get a little rocky.
Well, I'll correct myself too. She'll lose only if we're organized and we're together.
Right.
I will agree with that's it. So when I say I believe she'll win, is because I'm looking at it from the perspective of right now.
Right.
If it stays the way it is right now, she will win. But if we get smart, we come together, we organize, and we put aside our petty differences and say, what's the goal? Get Nancy out. Let's work together. Then yes, she'll be out of office. The problem is that we're not that organized. We're not that smart. Not to be Nancy Pelosi being out of office, or me worrying about what ally I disagree with on their strategy.
Right. And with Nancy Pelosi out of office, we're going to have to worry about who's going to be her successor.
Right.
The way I look at it is that as long as it's a successor who is more lefty, we're going to gain something.
Right.
Okay. I don't think Nancy Pelosi is at the left of the caucus anymore. She may have been at one time, but now she's to the right of the center of that caucus. She's always leaning over to the right in order to save the rightmost of her congresspeople.
Right.
And that's why she's been so bad for the progressives. Okay, with respect to Biden, though, I also think that Biden can be moved. He's someone who puts up a brave front, okay, a lot of the time. But if he finds the political cards are stacked against him, he can move. He can compromise.
He can move.
He can compromise.
I think everyone has a pressure point. Every single one of them, and we just have to figure out what that point is. We can get him. We can totally get him.
Yeah, I think the easiest one of those people to roll is probably little Chucky Schmucky.
Chuck Schumer?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an old name that was given to Chuck Schumer by Howie Klein, who went to the same high school in New York as Chuck Schumer.
I did an action in front of Chuck Schumer's apartment with Rise and Resist, I think like a month or two ago, to end the filibuster. It was a good action. There was a 24-hour action.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was really nice. We had the police. Obviously, the police was there. Obviously, they was there literally 24 hours. 24 hours. No one bothers them. But if you need healthcare, or if you need anything, there's no one to be found. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, they don't want to be found.
Right.
They don't want to be our representatives. They'll do everything they can to avoid being our representatives. Well, that's why we got to get rid of them.
Yeah, we don't have a representative democracy. We have to realize that, and that's the problem. We have to get people to realize that. Again, this is why I go back to, not to beat the horse, but I don't believe in electoral solutions. I don't feel like anybody is for my interests. I think that we need to figure out a way where we can actually do for ourselves in our own community. We got to figure out a way where we incentivize community-focused actions versus electing someone to office to fix a problem. We got to figure out a way where we can work around that, where we don't need that person to do that action, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be healthcare; it can be anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kay Clark Ryan says, Dingle had to deal with our, quote, sick care, unquote, system when her hubby was dying. She saw it firsthand.
There's a story.
Yeah.
We can probably use that. I mean, not to use the issue of her significant other as a way to pull to the heartstrings. But to echo back to the point of why I said that this is a non-political issue, because I said in the beginning of our conversation that we all get sick, we all go to the same place, we all go to the hospital, we all speak to a doctor. This is not a political issue. It's a human rights issue. So we need to remember that. So.
And we certainly do. So Lana says, what is but CMS? It's the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Okay, it's in HHS, and they do the management of the Medicare program and the federal end of the Medicaid program, okay, as well. They also produce very interesting statistics. They're a very good statistical organization. If you want to find out what we likely spent in 2021 on healthcare spending, okay, in this country, they're the best source to go to. They will tell you that we are very near $4 trillion in spending, okay, on healthcare.
Jesus.
Yes, and we get crap. That $4 trillion, far too much of it is going to make the people who run the health insurance companies rich.
Right.
And my wife Bonnie asks, can states that want that want a Medicare for all okay, tell me this, honey, because I can't really read this.
Can they mention in a week to vacate the chair for Pelosi?
Oh.
It would get a hell of a lot of attention and notice for Pelosi.
Okay, so there is a maneuver that can be done, okay, in Congress to get Nancy Pelosi out now if the left had the guts, okay, to pull the maneuver. It's called a vacate the chair motion. Okay. Okay. What you do is you make a motion that the chair is vacant, that the speaker, okay, is no longer the speaker. Now, that motion, until very recently, was a motion that any congressman, okay, was able to make. But after somebody pulled a vacate the chair trick, okay, on John Boehner, and I guess it was in 2014, they changed the rule so that the vacate of the chair motion was only a privileged motion, which meant it was entitled to a vote within 2 business days. It can only be done in that way if a party conference or party caucus, in other words, an official organization of one of the major parties, actually brings the motion. Well, it so happens that the Congressional Progressive Caucus is an official party caucus. It has a budget, actually, from the Congress, okay, that it gets. So it is an official party caucus. So if Jayapal were able to unite the caucus,
but she won't,
to agree to vacate the chair motion, then technically one could be floated, and it would have to get a floor vote within, I think it's something like 2 business days.
Who else in Congress we can probably go after? Because she's not going to do it. She doesn't have the balls.
She is really the only option, okay, at this point, because she's the chair of the CPC.
Right.
And so as long as they want her as chair of the CPC, there aren't that many official party caucuses. I don't even know if there's another one other than the Congressional Progressive Caucuses. But there are, okay, a number of informal caucuses, but I think what actually distinguishes a formal caucus is that it has a budget from the Congress to do certain things. And I'm only aware of the CPC having such a budget.
We should definitely do some research and see what other caucuses that we can use, because that might be something interesting to use to vacate the chair for Medicare.
The objective of doing such a motion would be to get a new speaker who would be amenable to a negotiation. In other words, when running for that office, okay, to replace Pelosi, someone, okay, who would be amenable not only but to bringing Medicare for all to the floor for a vote, but bringing also some of the Green New Deal legislation to the floor, the student debt elimination legislation, paid family leave, other things that people really need, a range of things to the floor. Also, you can get, in that kind of conflict, it's possible to get some rule changes out of the Congress also, like what, for example, would be an important rules change. Completely getting rid of any pay-go rules in Congress would be very important. Having a simple rule that says if you can get 20 co-sponsors to a bill, then you get a floor vote, okay, for that bill. And then there's also something else good, okay, they can get, which is good committee positions for the people in the caucus. All this could be gotten if they could get a situation where a number of speaker candidates were fighting among themselves, competing, and the Congressional Progressive Caucus held the balance of power, which in that situation it could well hold because it has something like 100 members in it.
Right. Yeah, it's a nice idea. If we can get someone, if we have someone in Congress that we can probably approach, I wouldn't be against it. Wouldn't poo-poo the idea. I just think Jamil Jayapal would be a terrible choice to go to get her to do it.
Yeah, I tend to have that feeling also, but on the other hand, she's very ambitious herself, and if she wants to go up the ladder in some way, in other words, in that situation, she might be able to negotiate to be a part of the leadership team of the new speaker.
Right.
She certainly wouldn't be acceptable as a speaker because she'd be considered to be too far left in the party. Right. And also she's known as a Democratic socialist, which would mean she probably couldn't stand for speaker, but she might be able to get herself a key position, okay, in leadership. And I think she is ambitious for that kind of thing.
Anything in the Senate we can use?
There's nothing like that. But vacate the chair motion, but for the Senate. In some ways, it's easier actually in the Senate. Okay, in other words, the person who happens to be the leader of the majority in the Senate is not the presiding officer of the Senate. Right. Okay, the presiding officer is the Vice President of the United States. So the majority leader position is an informal one, okay, inside of the party. It depends, on who the party elects. So it is possible for the Democrats tomorrow in the Senate to suddenly decide that they want to have a party caucus, okay, or a party conference, and they could ask Chuck Schumer to step down. And if enough of them were to vote in that way, he would have to step down. So, in a way, it's easier to replace him, okay, as the majority leader of the Senate than it is to replace Nancy Pelosi, because Nancy Pelosi is the presiding officer of the House. The Speaker of the House, okay, has official status inside the government.
Just had a tip of my tongue. What's this guy in the Senate? I forgot his name. escaping me. I don't know why.
You mean Senator McConnell?
Senator McConnell. If you can get him to step down or try to pressure him, would that help?
If you could get the Republicans, it has to be the Republicans who would ask him to step down.
Right.
Because it's an internal party matter.
Right.
So you have to see if you can find a Republican who wants to stand against him.
Right.
And that might be hard because he's a wizard when it comes to the rule book of the Senate, and knowing how to do all kinds of funny things, to get what he wants. And I don't know if they have anyone else on the Republican side of the Senate, who's like that.
Right.
Quite like that. So that's a problem. He might be more secure as the leader of the Republican Party compared to Schumer,
right.
As the leader of the Democratic Party. Schumer does have one thing going for him, though, but Dick Durbin is the next in line, for the leadership among the Democrats. Actually has more seniority than Schumer. But Dick Durbin never seemed to have very much drive to become the leader of the Democrats in the Senate. His position now is the party whip, and he's been the party whip forever. I think he's been the party whip since 2002 or something like that.
Wow.
And he's never really tried to contend. I mean, it was always amazing to me. Schumer became the choice of Harry Reid to replace him when Harry Reid left. I don't know why Durbin at that time did not try to become the leader of the Democrats, because he had greater seniority. And he's well liked as well because he's a very nice guy. So I just don't know why they went to Schumer. It might be because of the Wall Street money. As the senator from Wall Street, Schumer was able to pull in lots of money for campaigns, and he had much greater capability to do that, than Durbin had. So that might have been, the deciding factor between.
It sounds like that is the factor.
Yeah, it sounds like that may be the factor.
Right.
So Dolores Pierce, not too long ago, Pelosi was scared when protesters were outside her home. We need more protesting. That is a good point of Dolores. She was scared.
It's funny that she say that. It's funny that she say that. There's something coming up this fall. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Funny that she say that.
Did he see the tall fence around her home?
Let's just say I'm flying to San Francisco this fall.
Oh, okay. Have you got some way of getting around the tall fence that's around her house? Bonnie wants to know that.
Let's just say we're going there. I'm going there this fall.
So Carmen says, cut people's hours to improve their quality of life. Every job I ever had caused me some physical damage in one way or another. But the damage was never debilitating enough to qualify for disability. Isn't that the way things are in the United States? It's very hard to qualify for disability. Always worried about the people at the bottom cheating us.
Right.
We never worry about the people at the top cheating us. I mean, Bezos can cheat us all day long. We don't give a shit.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. We do not care.
And Laura Fielding says, do you mean she fancies herself? Let's see, did I skip over a whole bunch of stuff? I think I did suddenly skip over a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, I skipped over a lot of good stuff. Okay, but I'm afraid that we don't really have time for the good stuff. It's about 11:46 now. Why don't we set a hard time, of 12 o'clock, to end?
Heard.
Huh?
Heard.
Hurry.
Okay, and I will try to get to as many of the good comments as I can between now. Okay, and then so BL asks whether you're on Facebook, Shareef.
I am on Facebook.
So there it is. I am on Facebook.
Mm.
People do like the idea of a 4-day work week, or maybe even a 3-day work week. And let's see. Alice Green says Andre is excellent, compassionate, okay, and brilliant.
Agreed.
And Alice Green said he just calmed me TF down over a Boogaloo Boy situation. He's a brick. Laura says, remember that Representative Jayapal was one of the very first to go to the media with calls for Bernie to step down. Oh, did I mention that she has not endorsed whole Washington? However, to her credit, she did send a public message of thanks to M4M4All. So we'll hope to turn this into full participation next year. Yes, let's do it. Indeed, let's do it. And Laura says at 11:09, thank you for all these beautiful feedbacks. And thank you for Shareef and Joe for the Red Berets Craftivism solidarity. You mean for wearing the Red Berets. Means a lot. The Red Berets are the creativity connecting up the movement. There are many leaders. Shareef is a leader. Joe, you are a leader. Kenny is a leader. Lisa and Fran are leaders. Dr. Jarvis is a leader. Dr. Dooley is a leader. Ryan Knight is a leader. Thank you very much, Laura. But there are some leaders with only a few followers, and there are some leaders with a lot of followers, like, for example, Ryan Knight. And Laura says, I am team pressure. That's why we are protesting outside of Cleveland's office. I hope we will also be putting her on notice that if she doesn't schedule that hearing, she will receive a strong ass primary challenge. I hope she does. Who's going to be the strong ass who's going to stand? Laura Fielding says, that's the pressure point, and it's where team pressure and electoral collide. And Lana says, I watched the Red Beret whole Washington video with the full panel. It was very inspiring. Okay, and Lana says, I'm willing to set up a table at my local supermarket like the Girl Scouts to educate about Medicare for All.
Damn right.
Well, that's really good to do that.
There we go.
And Laura says, in recent years, strategy has been top down. This year has been bottom up. This is what I mean by we've brought to the revolution. We had no burn app. We had no media. We have a documentary because of Ryan Knight. We had 56 marches because of not me, us, the 99%, the grassroots. Yes, Laura, you are completely right.
Absolutely.
And Shane Coughlin is here saying, hello, Joe. Hello, Shane. That's KRTD Media. And Lana says, and KRTD says, hey, Lana to Lana. And there's a link to debbiedingle.house.gov, which is given, by Alice Green in these comments in the Facebook comments. Mm-hmm. So there's that link. And Alice Green says also she called out the EPA on the water pollution. I think the she means is Debbie Dingle called them out. On the water pollution. Yeah, I think Debbie Dingle would be very likely to do that. Carmen says Debbie Dingle is an ally. Yeah, I tend to think she is too. At least I hope she is. We can always hope. And Laura says, yes, Shareef Snuggs, let's platform her. Dang, I need to send her a red beret, it sounds like. Yeah, that would be a good idea. Laura says, I do seriously love you, Shareef. Laugh out loud, laugh out loud. And Kay says, AOC was in Ohio to try to help Nina Turner. Yeah, she was that. To try to help her, but I guess it wasn't sufficient. And Alice Green says, the sense of humanity is hugely underestimated. The spirit gave fellowship in the early unions was a huge force.
Absolutely.
Yes, I think so too.
Absolutely.
There was trying to think of, there was somebody who used to teach at Cornell in the school, of IR, who was one of Roosevelt's people, whose name was also something similar to Alice Green. I don't believe this could possibly be the same Alice Green, because she would have to be more than 100 years old at this point to be that. But I just wonder, if there's any relation. Alice Green, or the other Alice Green, if I recall that name correctly, was a big union person also. So I'm going to skip over some comments here, as I have been doing from time to time. Quaker Socialist says, Chucky Schmucky. Yeah. I always liked that one. It was a particularly New York type of nickname. Yeah. To Chucky. And Laura says, Nancy Pelosi is right of center, and she is deeply, deeply owned by the 1%. Not only that, she is deeply, deeply 1%. She's not even owned by them. She is them. And I think all efforts to place pressure on Pelosi or any other politician should be embraced. #FOF. In other words, I'm going to amplify the Force the Vote campaign efforts to replace her as speaker. And hell yeah, I'm going to amplify Shaheed. Multi-pronged integrated pressure campaign. I see them as inextricably linked, I guess. It's not that I need to text, bank, or donate. It's about solidarity and coming together. Alice Green says, Laura, when can I get you to come to the Greens? Laugh out loud. And Kay says that her new doctor is not good at all, and she shakes her head. And Laura says to Alice, I'm not a Dem. I Dem exited. I'm super happy to support any Washington Green actions you would want to invite the Red Berets to help with. I'm a member of the People's Party as well, but I believe in building a coalition government.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, we're getting near 12, but we're also at 11:40 now with the comments, so we're getting close to catching up.
Love it.
And was it Laura who said that? Another comment from Laura. Yeah, she says, I agree, Representative Jayapal won't do it, but I would like to see some of the pressure that goes into AOC go towards her. I mean, she needs to be held accountable for lack of bold leadership from the chair of the Progressive Caucus. And yes, I agree, entirely agree with that. Quaker Socialist said Hubert Humphrey was a rules nerd, and that's how he got the Civil Rights Bill through. Yes, he was really a rules nerd. He would have been an interesting president had he succeeded when he ran for the office in 1960.
Mm-hmm.
He ran against John Kennedy. Okay, and Robert Byrd also ran for president in that campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Alice Green said she's playing a long game. She is a potential future Bernie, but she is still new enough to be networking for her future career. I don't know if she's a potential future Bernie. She speaks very well, but I haven't seen that real, authentic type of charisma from her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she doesn't have the same kind of charisma Kshama Sawant has.
Right. Kshama Sawant is probably the only politician that I probably will vote for in this country. The first time I ever voted, for Joe. The first time I ever voted was last year when I voted for Jesse Ventura for president. It was the first time I ever voted.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And the only reason why I voted because I didn't know you can vote for anybody. I never knew that. Yeah.
You have learned an amazing amount
Right.
in a very short time, Shareef.
Yeah, that's true.
You have come the full way in a very, very short time.
Would he like to replace Pelosi?
Honestly speaking, you know what?
Are you back? Because we missed that whole comment. That whole comment. It was replaced by music.
What is that?
Okay, the last comment. Okay, that you made.
Oh,
it sort of devolved into a number of of musical tones. So we missed it. So could you repeat it, please?
No, absolutely. I was saying that the next presidential election, I might vote for Shama Sawant. Just write her name in.
Yes, actually, that's a very, very good suggestion.
You know what?
I might just do that myself.
We should start a campaign, a write-in campaign for Shama Sawant.
Yes, if you can, but in certain states, I think you can't even write in candidates.
That's true.
It all depends on the state rules.
That's true. I'm thinking about this.
Yes. Laura asks, do you mean she fancies herself the leader to replace Bernie? I mean, good luck to her. But Nina has the support of the movement, and even Nina's support among the very active online left is shaken. The anti-establishment fervor is higher than ever in my estimation for good reason. Yeah, because the establishment fails to deliver again and again and again. And Carmen says, is that a red beret that you're wearing, Mr. Shareef?
It is.
Indeed, it is a red beret.
It is.
It is a red beret. It's the Scottish type, of red beret. The kind they wear on the golf course. It's a very impressive red beret. Indeed. And Carmen says Pelosi is one of the main proponents pushing that stupid ACA voucher. That sounds like Pelosi. Lana says Shareef has been great. Thank you both. Indeed, Shareef has been great. And thank you all for coming, and thank you for staying so long. And Kay says Clyburn and other corporatists interfered with Nina in Ohio. I know. We got it. That's one guy we got to get out there. Clyburn. We got to get him out.
Right.
He's just awful. And Carmen says Joe's knowledge is worth more than money. He's a real treasure. Always love listening and watching his live stream. Thank you, Carmen.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And Alice says we want to get counted. And Dolores Pierce said thank you for a great discussion and show. And Carmen says, oh, that's fly impressive beret. I'm not sure that's not a typo because I'm not sure how fly got in there. Alice Green says the duopoly shut us out of debates and media, but they steal our ideas like the Green New Deal. They certainly do. The Green New Deal was a Green Party idea. I think the first one to run on the Green New Deal way back when, if I remember correctly, was Howie Hawkins, wasn't he? Alice Green says, good show. Thanks, gentlemen. Kay says, thank you for another discussion. I love you all. Kay, we love you too.
Right.
We absolutely do. Alice Green says, yep. And Laura Fielding says, Shareef for president, you can go waste taxpayer money wearing your Scottish red beret on the golf course. Jokes aside, much love to you, Shareef and Joe. I learned, I think, team pressure. Absolutely pressure. Absolutely good.
That's hilarious.
Okay, it is now midnight, and we've had a very nice party here.
We did. That's really funny.
Thank you all. I don't have anybody yet scheduled for next week. I haven't gotten around to ask people, but I intend to have another 3 Red Berets conversations next week. I have some people in mind, so I'll be real active tomorrow, asking people to become on board. More Red Berets emphasis, because we want to keep pressure on. Huh?
Have you interviewed Lisa Theophald yet?
Yes.
You have? Okay.
I have interviewed Lisa. She also has a standing invitation to come on my show anytime she wants.
Oh, that's great.
In fact, we talked on the phone for 3 hours today about various issues. But I was actually thinking of Jason Call.
That's great.
And I was also thinking, okay, of Amber Grigo.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also thinking of Cindy Davis at some point, but fairly soon, because Cindy Davis, I understand, is the legislative expert.
Mm-hmm. What about the one we just mentioned, Debbie?
Debbie Dingle.
Debbie Dingle. What about Debbie Dingle?
She's a congresswoman. I can certainly try to get her on the show.
Debbie Dingle, I remember her.
But I'm not sure that one is going to be easy.
Okay.
What I've been trying to do in the short run is to give as much exposure to the Red Berets as possible, and the whole Washington movement, as well. Right. And after I finish the individual interviews, in other words, at the time I run out of people to ask, I'm then going to start panel shows, with the Red Berets also.
That's beautiful.
In order to keep in touch with the movement, in order to keep on trying to grow it.
Have you interviewed yet Georgia Davenport?
Yes, I've interviewed Georgia and Joe Jarvis, and
have you interviewed?
But sorry, say that again, Shareef. You faded out.
Kenny Ballantyne, have you interviewed him?
I have not interviewed Kenny Ballantyne yet. I'd love to interview Kenny Ballantyne.
There you go.
Okay. So that's actually 3 for next week. That's actually 4 that I could possibly ask for next week. So I'm going to try to get the 3 people on for next week. I want to leave 1 show next week vacant for news. I did that, this past week. And so that seems like a practical way, of doing this. But I always want to keep in touch with the movement. So guaranteed, even in the long pull, at least 1 show a week, for the Red Berets to keep in touch with all the activism that you're doing.
That's beautiful.
Our fielding suggests Catherine Lewandowski.
Yes.
Ariana Everson. Yes, I've thought of those 2. Right. And also Courtney Love, as well.
I love Courtney.
And she points out that I have guests for a week. I'd like to have Fran Bauer on, too. I don't know how she feels about that, but maybe she can tell us because she's in the comments right now. Because I want to show that the Red Berets are from all over the country. And so that's important, too. I did mean to ask you one question, Are you going to be active in terms of getting the New York Health Act passed?
Maybe. I'm not sure yet.
That worked.
I know Scott is already active.
Scott is very active, very, very active. And I talked to Scott.
But I'm sorry, say that again.
Have you interviewed Scott?
Yes.
Okay.
I have interviewed Scott.
Yeah, I might.
Matter of fact, we had a wonderful interview.
I volunteered when the New York Health campaign for the New York Health Act. I actually went to one of their events. I participated in their die-in. I actually did their march and rally, stuff like that. So, and in that regard, I'll definitely do that for sure. I'll definitely volunteer and do things like that. I don't know about like work with them as far as like organizing anything, but as far as volunteering to help out, for sure, I'm definitely for that. I like that.
Yeah, it just seems like with Cuomo gone, that that New York State may be ripe now for that kind of change.
I think that the 4 states that are closest for a state-led initiative is New York, California, Washington, obviously, and then maybe Connecticut. I know that some people may feel have certain issues in regards to what states are closer than the others, but I feel that might be, honestly, people might poo-poo it. I mean, that might be the closest way we actually getting a national system is state-led issues. I mean, people may hate that conversation, but I mean, if it's community focused and we're talking about including everybody, even on the state level, I don't see the problem. That's number one. And number two would be the fact that if we already have ground game for it and people are moving towards that, I don't see the problem. So,
yes, I also don't see the problem.
Right. But I hear you about Cuomo though.
It feeds the movement. In other words, to have success at the state level is going to feed the movement. Okay, and people, of course, there are going to be lots of red state governors who are going to be completely opposed, but it's going to increase the number of red state citizens who are going to want the Medicare for all protection for themselves, and they're in a position to pressure their senators and turn their senators around because they don't have to worry about the gerrymander with their senators.
Right.
So I think there's going to be increasing pressure on those senators as more and more states get single payer programs.
Right. And also too, something I said this in a prior interview, that we get one state in. All we need is one state to pass some form of free at the point of service, some type of Medicare for all. We have a working argument because something I don't think people realize that once one state gets in, the conversation of how we're going to pay for it diminishes. I know a lot of people feel like, but what about the states that can't do single payer? That's not the point. That's not the question we should be asking. The question should be asking is, how come the states that do have it, how come they can't afford it? And how come we can't do it nationally? That's the question we should be asking.
Right, but it seems to me from the Washington example, okay, and the financials involved, okay, in that example, it seems to me those financials are actually generalizable to all the states.
Agreed.
Because the big thing is that there's the savings, but from single payer, which amounts to something like 33% or so, or something like that. And then the remaining 67%, 70% of that would actually be covered by the federal revenue available. So that means each state only has to come up, with maybe 20% left of the total bill. And since lots of other money would be saved by the states as a result of their passing a single payer program, and it'd be a spur to the economy, okay, as well.
Right.
It seems to me passing a single payer program would make any state in the United States more fiscally sustainable than it was before the single payer program actually got passed. So I really don't think there's a financial problem. I think some of my MMT colleagues who believe there is, okay, are off base on it because I don't think they're on top of the actual financing, which is going to go on. In other words, there's a whole bunch of federal financing, which is generally can be tapped, okay, by these programs.
Could you invite me on back to your show, just specifically an MNT? I want to go back on your show just so about this, because I really want to get down to the nitty gritty, not just on MNT, but the state versus national financial conversation. Because a lot of people feel that if you do a single payer system statewide, you know, the federal government can't or won't step in. So I want to discuss that. I know we don't have time now, but I would like to have a discussion about this.
Yes, I would love to have a discussion about this too. I'd be happy to have you back on the show, but soon to talk about that with me. Right. Okay, maybe the opportunity will arise this coming week. If it doesn't arise this coming week, it certainly will arise the week after.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
It could be in October.
I have to make a comment to Quaker Socialist here. Who points out, he says, Jabari Morris is fantastic, okay, on MMT, okay, from Real Progressives. Okay, I'm Joe Firestone. I have written 7 ebooks dealing with the applications of MMT, okay, to our political system. Jabari Morris has not even written a single one. Stephen Grumbine has not even written, okay, a single one. There is no one from RP, with the possible exception of Poti, Panagiotis, Giancoris, who has written even one. Right. So, what I'm telling you, I don't usually toot my own horn, okay, in this way, but it's ridiculous to compare Jabari Morris or anybody within the RP group in terms of MMT to me based on writings that we have previously produced over a long period, okay, of time. So I want to state that very emphatically. Now, okay, I know Fadl Kaboub, okay, is often on the RP shows, and Fadl, okay, is excellent. Okay, he can certainly match me by any day in the week, but he's not one of the mainstays, okay, of RP. He's not really fully a part, okay, of RP. Yeah, Poti is a PhD, and he studied with Matt by Forstetter, and I think with, I think this other guy's name was Henry, okay, in the early 2000s. I know Poti. Poti is very, very sharp. He's very, very sharp, and he's very, very good. There's no question about that. If you consider him part of that group, okay, of Real Progressives, he's certainly the best of them. But Quaker Socialists, with all due respect, Jabari makes a difficult topic approachable for those of us who are really poorly educated. He may do that. Okay, I'm not going to say that he doesn't. When I was with Real Progressives, he was the editor of the blog. I sometimes wrote for that blog. I may have two or three blogs, okay, that is still up there. But I blogged MMT, hundreds of articles at the UMKC site when that was the center for MMT, okay, in this country. And the person who recruited me to blog there was Stephanie Kelton. Okay, and I have literally hundreds of posts up there, which you may find to be very illuminating if you care to go over there and but take a look at them. Okay, but I'm sorry, this got a little personal, because there's been a lot of conflict over the last 3 months, between the Red Berets, and RP. And
which I still don't understand. I still don't understand it either.
It
to be continued.
What it has to do with, as far as I can tell, the most important thing, it has to do with is actually political judgments, not economic judgments.
Right.
The basic economic judgment is that the federal government can never voluntarily go bankrupt.
Right.
Involuntarily, I should say, be driven into bankruptcy. It can only voluntarily decide that it can run out of money. So fiscal sustainability is not a question for the federal government. But for any state government, since it's not the currency issuer, then fiscal sustainability is theoretically a problem. And sometimes it hasn't been just a theoretical problem. Sometimes states have run out of money and have had to issue scrip to keep going. In other words, states have actually issued IOUs to people for certain functions at various times. I was in Michigan, at one of those times. And I think there's been also one time in California had to do that. So that happens occasionally. But the truth is that generally speaking, over the course of time, the states have been fiscally sustainable. The federal government has not been bailing the states out.
Right.
And that's just a fact. And by the way, to the extent that states are fiscally unsustainable, it's because they've come into the union and there's only one currency issuer, in the union. So one can argue that if the states fall into financial trouble, it's actually the obligation of the federal government to bail them out, because it's the federal government that has the currency power. And the states joined the federal government, for protection. That includes, in my view, protecting them against any financial problems they might run into.
Right.
So that's another question. Okay. But the basic economic point is the difference in fiscal sustainability. Now, once you acknowledge that difference, then the question becomes, how do you apply that to the political situations in the various states and to the federal government itself to draw conclusions that it would be better to go the federal route, as opposed to the state route? And that's where you get into differences, of judgments, which are not very much in the line of economic judgments.
Right.
They're more judgments about what's going to happen in politics, who's going to win, who's going to lose, who's going to be, in the ascendancy, how strong is the progressive movement actually going to be in the next 2-3 years. All these are factors that will play into whether states turn out to be fiscally sustainable.
That just sounds like a weird thing to get into. Like, for me, I'm not an economist. I'm not someone who knows numbers, right? So me as a person, if you're coming in from a perspective of community focus, right? So we as a community, we feel that we want healthcare. We need healthcare, right? What difference does it make that if the state doesn't have the money, why can't we go to our federal government, right, and say, this is a problem, you need to fix it because we're all citizens of this country?
We can.
Right. So why is that? I never understood, like, why is that has to be a debate? Where is the
only reason why it has to be a debate is because this country has fallen into neoliberalism, and the politicians at the federal level don't want to meet their obligations to the states, just like they don't want to meet the obligations they have to the people of this country.
Right.
So what's needed to make everything sustainable is to get rid of this group of people and get in some other people.
Right.
And
so I understand people's concerns. I just feel that if we go back to, again, pressure campaign, community focus, I don't think those things are an issue.
And I agree. I completely agree. I also think that when these state programs start off, they're very unlikely to be fiscally unsustainable at the start. And once they get to delivering these services to people, and people see the savings and they see the service, there is going to be a lot of things, just an awful lot of pressure on the federal government to help the states to stay in the game. There's also going to be a lot of pressure on the senators and congressmen to go to a national Medicare for All plan as well. There's going to be pressure in both of these levels. And it's going to be very good for the movement. I think the state things can only add to the movement instead of subtracting from it.
Those are dust to the boots on the ground. Those are the people. The people in our community who are fighting the hardest are people who are state led. So that's something we have to think about.
Okay. Okay. So the answer is yes. You can come back on my show either next week, the week after, and we can talk about this in more detail.
I have the book right here.
Okay. Yeah. You have the popular book right there. Yeah. When you get finished with that, when you get finished with that, the next thing to read, the Bible of MMT, is the macroeconomics textbook.
Jesus.
That was written by Bill Mitchell and Randy Ray and also Martin Watts. So 3 people. It's a more expensive book. It runs something like $70 or so. Mm-hmm. But it is the first text that was written from the MMT point of view. It's also very good because it covers the neoclassical point of view and competing points of view as well, because the MMT people believe if you don't understand those points of view, you can't fully understand, what MMT is about. But it's the first of the MMT texts. It's the only MMT text right now. And Randy Ray, and Bill Mitchell are 2 of the 3 originators of the movement. The third one, is Warren Mosler. Okay. Okay, so Stephanie actually Randy's student. Okay, and also the student, of some other people. But basically, it was Randy, who was essentially mentoring her for some years. Now, she quickly got into it and quickly became successful. She's written one of the most important articles, in MMT. And that article is called "Can Taxes and Bonds Finance Federal Spending?" And the answer that she gave in that article, is no.
No, right, which makes sense.
Right. But it's a very technical argument. The heart of that article, in order to really get it, fully understand it, you have to read it maybe 3 or 4 times. But it's a very rewarding article. It will stay with you for a very long time after that.
Right.
After you read it. Anyway, I'll be happy to have you on again to talk about that.
I'm going to take some notes before I come on. I want to be prepared.
Okay. I love to talk MMT. That's fine. Take all the notes. That's all right.
I want to be ready.
Okay. I do have, by the way, it's, on YouTube. I have 9 live streams out.
Oh, wow.
On Stephanie's book. I went through it in 9 live streams of roughly 2 hours apiece. And then I did 3 live streams concerning the Job Guarantee book Pavlina Chernyeva wrote. Okay. So anyway, if you're
Okay.
interested, those live streams are there.
Okay, heard. I'll definitely check that out.
Okay. So, but good night, everybody. We're long past time. I'm not going to go through all these other comments that came after 12 o'clock, okay, because we got to stop somewhere. Shareef, thank you very much for coming.
Oh, Joe, thank you. You're the man. Thank you for doing this. This is awesome.
And for staying so long. It was really wonderful, but very enjoyable. And yes, we will meet again very shortly.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night, guys. Bye, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you soon.
All right.
I'll be back on Tuesday with somebody, folks. Okay, bye. Okay, so I will end the broadcast. Here we go.